Hello, horror fan, best friends, and ghoulish knights, and welcome to the 40th episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror. Highly stylized mid-90s thrillers, body horror, folk horror, sci-fi horror, the horror adjacent, the psychologically terrifying, scary films in general. Each episode, I sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so we can gush about everything that makes it just so damned cool. Viewers, thank you for the support. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you're so inclined. It all helps to get the word out and bring some much needed love to this little podcast. And audio listeners, the show is also available on podcast services around the world like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So don't forget to leave a rating when you stop by. 5 stars is always appreciated, always helps out. And don't be afraid to send me a little note if there's some audio issues with those. I know there was something recently with fun little clicking sound in the past 7 episodes. Those have all been corrected. Everything should be sounding as good as it possibly can at this point. But enough of all that housekeeping, because today I have the privilege of welcoming back for his 3rd appearance, Mr. Yasman300. Yaz, how the hell are you?
I'm doing well, Joe. And how are you? Because
I'm doing
it's been a
okay.
long time since I spoke to you.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we've been on one of Mark's Zoom calls or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it's been roughly a year since we did one of these together. So I'm glad to be able to get you back on, man. Sorry that, speaking of audio issues, I'm a little bit under the weather, so my voice is a little jacked up. Hopefully the gate on the mic will keep out most of the sniffling. Whatever it is going around work, I seem to have caught it, and I am working my way through it. But, dedication to the podcast, right? But glad to have you back on, man. We've talked
And
about...
also, I would tell also the people, it's been a long time since I did a podcast. Even my own's on hiatus, so I might be a little bit rusty with the way I'm speaking. So apologies also in advance.
Hey, we'll make it happen, man. We'll make it happen. We've talked about doing the film we're going to talk about for quite some time. It just hasn't quite lined up with the two of us here. But, with spooky season approaching and the director just a couple of months out from releasing his most recent film, this was sort of perfect timing because today's film is the 1995 classic Seven, directed by David Fincher and written by Andrew Kevin Walker. The screenwriter, he is the screenwriter for Fincher's new film, The Killer. Was also a script doctor for one of our favorite films, Event Horizon. I saw. That was interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You also get great
interesting history if you read about him.
Say again.
He has a very interesting history, like the fact that he always argued with people. It's like, hey, because you've heard stories like how we talk about the history of the movie, but he has histories like he always fights for his true vision of his script, and then the studio would end up rechanging it because they found his script to be too dark, etc.
Yeah. The film didn't test particularly well, and the critics didn't care for it. I mean, they kind of were mixed a little bit on it in its initial release, but it's gone on to be considered one of the greatest thrillers of all time, with one of the greatest twists in cinema history as well. You also have a great Howard Shore score. This score just rips as it goes along, especially towards the end of the film.
Good double feature with Silence of the Lamb, since they're both by him. This cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And not too many years separate the two either. Now, this is Fincher's second film after his not so great experience doing Alien 3, which I unironically love. I really do love that film. Both it's...
I did an episode with our friend Lady Macbeth, and even after, that was my first time watching, I was like, you know what? It ain't that bad. Mostly because I saw the other sequels, and compared to that, that's not as the worst thing that happened to the Alien franchise.
Yeah, and that work print version of it is pretty cool too. I think,
but I think that's not approved if any cut they've made, even the work print.
No, but it's definitely an interesting take on the film, and includes some scenes that were cut out from the script, and it's just it's an interesting watch for sure. But watching this film, You can really see Fincher kind of developing his own style that you will come to know really well from watching his films throughout the years. He doesn't quite go full Fincher in this film, but you can see the beginnings of it, and I love it for it. I saw this
Happens a
in
lot with first time directors, like when you
yeah.
look at people like who are not established, like, hey, you know what? I'll go the studio are over them because even you hear about the making of this film, the studio were fighting over how the vision of the movie is gonna be, and for this film it took the cast because Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman had to fight for Fincher's vision, and what's the writer's name also? Andrew what?
It was Andrew Kevin Walker.
Yeah, they had to also fight for his original script version.
Yeah, it
Even
seems
because I
that
don't know if you
everybody
read the story.
involved kind of knew what they had there, and
Yeah.
it's good that they fought for it. That's for sure.
I can tell you
Because
something. I
yeah,
believe if this movie came out in the 70s, I think the studio would have greenlit because the 70s were the time when, because this feels like a 70s movie. And I don't know if you
yeah,
felt it. It reminded me of similar way of the French Connection because how the characters are. Because
yeah.
how like the main character is not like a 100% a good guy because Papa is doing French Connection how he is, because we
Mhm.
find out that he's racist and you find out that him become the way he's acting, and then the ending is
Yeah.
kind of similar,
I,
like it's a bleak,
I,
it's not
I
a happy
wasn't going to
ending.
bring it up until later in the discussion, but yeah, Brad Pitt's character Mills is, kind of a rampant homophobe throughout this thing. So it kind of has similar vibes where that's concerned. It's one of the bits of the film that hasn't exactly aged super well, but that and his
But
use
it
of the
fits with the
hard
character
R
knowing how
word,
he is.
it does. And it's also a product of its time too. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah, kind of similar in that regard. You're absolutely right. It's a good call, man. Now I saw
Um,
this
and
film.
also
It
the reason I bring up the French because we lost the great William Friedkin, and I just actually could tell, so
yeah,
to haunt him, I'm gonna watch the French Connection.
yeah.
And also, I would tell this to people: don't watch the one on Criterion version or the digital because they edited the film. And you might have heard about what they
So
did.
I've
Disney did
heard.
with the
Yeah,
film.
yeah. That's
Buy
kind
the
of fucked
Blu-ray.
up.
I know it's not the 4K, but at least this is the edited what the true version of the film.
Yeah, that's kind of fucked up, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now back when this originally released, I probably saw this in its opening weekend in the theater. I was a junior in high school, and our
You're
minds, our
giving more
our
ammunition
little
for Andy,
minds
right?
were absolutely blown by this
Yeah.
film when it first came out. It was such a perfect mid '90s film between the soundtrack and the people that were in it, a little bit with the overall look and vibe as well, because it's pretty '90s, all right, but
Yeah.
yeah, man, it's one of those things where I would give anything to be able to see this film with fresh eyes and not know the twist, even though this movie really does reward repeat viewings with the little, nuggets about, things to do with Mill's wife that are kind of sprinkled through. And if you knew what was going to happen, you'd be like, oh no, oh no, 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 no. But yeah, I still would love to be able to be shocked by the ending of this film all over again. I know you've told me that this is your favorite David Fincher film and one of your top
Yeah.
10 of all time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Why seven? Why have you brought us seven today?
no, maybe it's because I like maybe the style of the tone and maybe the endings. Like that was like the main reason why I like it. And also, peace because I think I prefer this one more over Silence of the Lamb because of how dark it is, and it's one of this movie like it's make you question a lot of stuff because when I remember watching it, maybe the first time years ago, maybe I was like into, but now rewatching and learning more about how about the movie industry, and especially like I mentioned the French Connection and how 70s films were getting made. I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe this gave me a different appreciation about the film.
Yeah.
And also maybe the filmmaking also because what they went through, and they had to do some stuff involving Brad Pitt's character. We will talk about it later.
All right. All
I think you know
right.
what I'm talking about, right?
Well, we'll get into that a little bit later,
Yeah.
like you said. But this film just has a freaking look, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
A bit of that 70s vibe rolling through it as well. Um, it, yeah, yeah, it's one of those films that's absolutely more horror adjacent. It absolutely
yeah.
falls in that thriller category, but it is
I think this is the closest they've ever done
horrific.
to a horror movie for me, at least. I think it's more scarier than Alien 3, I'll say this.
Well, I think Audition is pretty well a horror film at the end of the day,
Yeah,
but and The Lost Boys. Come on, let's be fair.
yeah.
But yeah, this is one of those absolutely horror adjacent. You know, all those people that want to say I don't like scary movies. You'll often find out that they like Silence of the Lambs, and they like this one as well.
Yeah.
This absolutely broke Brad Pitt as, you know, somebody who could
Yeah.
actually act, who, you know, was more than just a pretty face, because up until this point, that's kind of how he was marketed to a large degree. And you
Getting
had,
him to the movie was one of the reasons why the project was able to greenlight, because the fact
yeah,
that he was the biggest star, him and Morgan Freeman. It's like, hey, we got two of these big stars, we were able to green it, and they like I mentioned, they fought for Fincher's vision for the film.
hmm
Because
yeah.
the studio,
And even though she's hardly in it, Gwyneth Paltrow is fantastic
yeah,
in this. And it's probably a good thing that she and Brad Pitt were dating around this time, because the chemistry
yeah,
really
he
comes
actually is the
through.
one because some of the casting members, like he was the one who he helped secure the people's like, hey, we can help this, and you know who they originally wanted, I think, for the because a lot of people were passing on the project. It's like, man, this is too dark, I can't do it. I think Denzel was one of the actors. I think he
Oh,
was
really?
approached for Brad Pitt's character, but then
Hmm.
I think he regretted it, and he did that movie with Rami Malek and Jared Leto. Remember, they did a movie which is similar type, also like the
Hmm.
detective going after a serial killer.
I can't remember which one that is. I'll have to
The
look
Little
at.
Things, I think it's called.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I haven't seen that, but I don't
I
know. I
saw
did.
people. Some people were they're not talking positive. Some were saying, and it's
No.
just another bad ripoff of Seven.
Yeah, it kind of did not get wonderful reviews at the time, so I think I just kind of let it slip on by. But yeah, yeah, the cast,
And also,
even all the little bit players in this, you know, you got Arlie
yeah, so
Emery
many
as the
people I was
captain.
surprised to see in the film. I even forgot they were in it. Like I didn't know that Richard Ramsey was in the film.
Yeah, as the
I forgot.
DA, and
Yeah,
John C. McGinley as the head of the SWAT team.
yeah.
Yeah, it's God. Even the great character actor Michael Massey, and we'll get to him later. Um, but
Oh, I remember who he is. He's the guy
yeah,
from The Crow, right?
yeah.
Man,
Unfortunately, he
that's
was
a
the
good
one
what
that
happened to him.
pulled the trigger on the prop gun
Yeah.
that ended Brandon Lee's
On
life.
the month of the day he died.
Y-
He was also in the Amazing Spider-Man. The guy
yeah.
in the end who always appears at the end of credits, the shadowy guy.
Yep. And he died of stomach cancer, I think, back in 2016. Just unfortunate, because that situation with the Crow really messed him up. He took a year off of
It missed a
acting.
lot of people actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a horrible situation. It's like, yeah, you're the one that pulled the trigger, but it wasn't your fault either. But you're going to blame yourself still.
Yeah,
It's kind of horrific. But
yeah.
yeah, not to dwell on that, but yeah, the cast in
Speaking
this
of
thing
the
is
Crow, man, did you
awesome.
see the news that Lionsgate has got the right to the new Crow movie with Bill Skarsgård?
Yeah, I've heard something about that. I just haven't heard much since. Seems like that came out quite a while ago, that news, but I can't think of I've heard
I mean, I
anything
know that
else.
movie they already because that movie had a lot of production history, different directors and actors, and now I
Mhm.
think they just filmed it.
Huh.
Because
Well, I mean, God
I don't know
willing,
how
it's something
just
watchable, but yeah, the original film, I can't believe they were able to make as good a film as they were with you know, having to cobble together what they had shot. And
do you know who was Brandon Lee's body double in that movie?
um oh God, I know this one too. Yeah, I
The
can't.
director of the John Wick movies,
That's
Chad
right.
Stahelski.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
He was
That
friends with Brandon Lee because I don't know how close they were, but I know that they were the same training place. And then after he passed away, they had to pick him because I think he had the same body figure. And he even
mhm.
said, I saw an interview with Scott Atkins was talking about it, and he looked very uncomfortable talking about it. And
Yeah,
he even
I'm
said this
sure that
affected him.
fucked
It's
him
like,
up
hey, I
too.
never used like real bullets in my sets after this.
Yeah, it's oof. Again, a really horrific story. If you happen to have a Shutter subscription, there's a docu series on the platform called Cursed Films, and they have a really great episode about The Crow. It's
One of them also
it's
the
heartbreaking.
Poltergeist episode. They happened Poltergeist.
Yeah, there's one about Poltergeist. There's one on The Exorcist. That's one of the reasons why. Yeah, it was sad that Friedkin passed, and I appreciate his contributions to cinema. But also, at the end of the day, the dude was kind of an asshole on a lot of sets. Um, so
Yeah, but
I feel a little
I like
conflicted
that he
about
didn't give
him.
a. What, can we allow to curse?
Yeah, by all means.
I like that he's one to strike that he didn't give a shit what people think. It was like so like
Oh
so if
yeah.
someone asking, hey, how do I shoot my movies? Like nobody cares if you just shoot the movie, shoot whatever you want, digitally film, whatever, just shoot the goddamn movie. It's like actors come in, it's like you come in like he told the story that you can watch it online, but working with actors, like he said that I worked with Tommy Lee Jones and we should turn the movie. I was like, I told Tommy Lee Jones, you come in here, you walk over here, and you move there. Tommy Jones like, okay, so I come here, I come over here, and I move there. Okay. Then Benicio del Toro was like, why do I have to come in here? I was like, so it's like, just move. He would do. And then he would say that Nick Nolte, when he was doing Blue Chips with him, he would hand him a note. It's like, my character's backstory. It's like, this is not in the script. It's like, this is what I believe. It's like, I don't care. It's like, he would throw the script and then he would come to him. It's like, did you read it? He's like, yeah, I read it now. Come over here, come walk over here, and then move over there. This is what you should do.
Huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
his stuff is really fascinating. Yeah, I heard about some of the stories. Some of the editors people come in, it's like, I know sometimes people say he's hard, but he cares about his movies, etc. Even with the movie, what did he did with Michael Shannon and Ashley Judd? Bug was it? He did that movie too.
Yeah, I think that was one. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds
he
familiar.
said that when they were editing the film, Friedkin laughed. Is it to them why? He's like, people are going to hate this movie. He knew.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people like that film.
I think it's one of the divisive movies like critics were gonna like, but the audience weren't gonna hate it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I liked about it. And he also has a movie coming out, and I don't know if you read like the studio will come word like, oh, he's old now. We don't know if he can have to. They had to have Guillermo del Toro like on set with him. Guillermo said, I did not directed anything. Every scene you watch in this movie, Friedkin direct. I was just there talking with him and making sure that he's doing well. He's well acquainted, everything, etc. Even
Mm,
people who worked on the film, they could to praise Del Toro. He's like, yeah, he was very professional. He loved working with us.
interesting. Huh.
Yeah, the movie it's called the Mutiny of the I forgot what it's Mutiny something because it's actually God what is called it has I think what's his name Kiefer Sutherland, Jason Clarke, and the late Lance Reddick in it.
Huh.
Yeah,
Well, I should look into
just
that sometime. Huh. I'll just add it to the list. The
yeah.
ever-growing list that never goes down.
Coming out on Paramount Plus, yeah, and I know some people were unhappy it's not going theatrical.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Boy. Well, we should get a little
let's
bit
go
more
back out
on
to Christmas
track here.
movies.
We
I know
should
people
jump
might be
into
mad.
things. What do you say we do so? We
Yeah, let's
start things
begin.
off with that sweet, sweet New Line Cinema logo. You're in for a good time with a 90s film if you're getting either that or the Dimension Films logo, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we start off in this unnamed city.
New
It's
Line and Dimension were the 90s genre films. This is where you need to one genre movie
yeah.
go to New Line
Oh,
or
big time.
Dimension.
Big time, yes.
Yeah.
So let's see here. This unnamed city, it's clearly inspired by New York, but it also looks a lot like LA. It's just a lot rainier than you would typically get in LA. But it's clearly you read about the creation of the script of this film, and the writer was really inspired by his time in the 80s in New York with, a kind of high crime and a lot of drugs and everything else during that time period. And it shows. Let's see here. We've got Detective Somerset, played by Morgan Freeman. And, they were introduced to him as he's kind of getting ready for his day. He's picking up all of his stuff for his pockets. You've got, not only his badge and, that kind of stuff, but also a switchblade. That's unusual, but I think it's a cool little touch for the character. We cut to him at a crime scene where it's clear that this guy's been shot by his wife, and it's kind of an open and shut case.
And what's his name? The writer playing the body.
Oh, that's interesting. Did not know. But it's of course Somerset. He makes a comment to the detective on the scene. Did the kid see anything? And the guy's like, the kid. The fuck we care about the kid, right? This is, a slam dunk. We're all going to be really glad when you're. Oh yeah.
Exception.
Yeah, they're all going to be super glad when he's retired, because he's the one that always asks these obnoxious questions that, at the end of the day, just cause more trouble. They, cause more paperwork. He's just kind of a pain in the ass to them.
And also, it's the only one that he cares about it. And you can see him like he's way better cop than any other cop on the force.
Yeah. And then we get Brad Pitt's Detective Mills bounding up the stairs. He introduces himself to Somerset. And they step outside. He's going to be partnered with him for basically the next week before Somerset retires, so that he can kind of take over his caseload and eventually his office. And the topic comes up that, in their conversation on the phone, Mills had talked about how he had, kind of fought to get this assignment and to be relocated to this city. And that just mystifies Somerset, because it's kind of a horrible place. Nobody wants to be there. And he's
the hotshot guy. He's like, he wants to make a name for him.
That's exactly it. He calls himself.
That's not just everyone who works in they've met a guy who's like this.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
There's a job. We work. There's someone who wants to make a name for himself.
Yep. He's young and eager, and and that's kind of how Somerset treats him, telling him, hey, okay, well, during this week, you're going to be my eyes and ears. I want you to watch and listen. And Mills kind of takes umbrage with it. And he's like, yeah, I wasn't a stand around and guarding a Taco Bell, he tells him, right? And they kind of get into it a little bit over this. And, they just kind of cut from there to, back later that evening, and Somerset's back at home. And, kind of getting ready for bed, and he's got all this city noise around him. He's just kind of reading in bed, and he's got this lovely technique of using a metronome to kind of help tune out the noise around him from the neighboring apartments and everything going on out on the street. And it sounds like, something horrible has happened out on the street, but he just gets the metronome started, and he drifts off to sleep. And we get such a mid-90s title sequence at this point. We get a fun remix of 9 Inch Nails' Closer, and this kind of music video.
David Fincher collaborators too.
Yes, exactly. Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross wasn't in the picture quite yet. I don't think it was until he was involved with him with their little side project, How to Destroy Angels. But at this point, Atticus Ross is involved with 9 Inch Nails, and of course, Trent Reznor and he do film scores together.
A lot of people do that know Fincher was a music director, so I think that's why he knows his music style.
Absolutely, yes. We get this title sequence that feels like a music video, and
done by Kyle Cooper, if people don't know him.
Yeah. We basically get shots of John Doe, who, we don't know exactly who he is at this point, but doing his work and, putting his notebooks together and basically shaving his fingerprints off and other just horrific stuff. Great use of the music and the imagery.
Yeah.
It's perfect and super mid-90s. It is perfect. We move on to Monday, and
Yeah.
Somerset and Mills. They're going to be investigating the first murder, but we're not quite there yet. We've got Mills waking up in bed with his wife, Tracy. They're clearly still unpacking. There's boxes everywhere. For some reason, they were eating Chinese food in bed the night before because there's empty cartons and chopsticks on the nightstand. And I love him kind of moving around the room, trying to be quiet as he gets ready. He kind of trips over something, and then he's sitting on the edge of the bed, and the phone rings, and he gets his call of where to go, and he just quickly reaches for it, and because of course that's going to help. But they have this kind of cute little moment together, establishing their chemistry. He calls himself Serpico, and she wipes an eye crusty out of the corner of his eye. They're adorable together. They're absolutely cute. Cut immediately to Mills standing in the rain, just kind of hunched with a couple of coffees as he waits for Somerset to get his gear out of his trunk. I love the bit with the coffees, how he got one for each of them. Somerset doesn't want it, so he just puts it down and then follows him, and eventually he just hands it off to this cop. We'll get there in a minute. The officer at the scene, he's a little callous about what has gone down, and Mills kind of calls him on it. He's like, hey, you didn't check for vitals on this guy? Is that how it's done here? And they argue a little bit. Basically, we have a gentleman who was found face down in a plate of spaghetti. And yeah, it's, well, we'll get there. But I like the back and forth conversation. I like the tracking shot through the rain. It's, again, we're getting that little bit of Fincher where the action is dead center in the frame and the camera is perfectly following it. And we'll get more of that later in the film, of course. But the line about, honestly, if this guy was sitting at least for the past 45 minutes in his own shit and piss, if he were alive, he would have stood up already, the guy says. Mills is done with him. He just gives him the coffee and they head inside. And this is where Somerset kind of calls him on the conversation. He's like, I'm curious, what was the point of all that? I like his introspection here and there throughout the film, his questioning of Mills and just the way he is. It's again, just does a lot to establish the character of Somerset, I think. And just, him being just kind of always a detective, right?
Yeah. And he also knows that because having spent years on the force and the city, he knows how they are reacting. I mean, he knows very well that they haven't checked the body, even if he's alive. That's okay.
Yeah. He's he's not callous so much himself. It's that
he gave up hope on the people and humanity. That's what he is.
I don't know that he's necessarily given up, but he's done with it. And that's why he's retiring and moving away. He just can't continue. And, at this point, when the film was released, Morgan Freeman was in his late 50s. God, I can't believe he's as old as he is now. He's in his mid 80s now, but So I think we're meant to assume that, the character is roughly the same age as the actor at the time this was made. And, sure, it's an age when I think a police officer, especially a detective, might consider retiring. But also, he seems to be the type of detective that would have a good number of years left in him if he was still dedicated to what he was doing. But yeah, I think he's just done. Just done. But yeah, inside
So we
this,
talk about it in the ending. Something he says the ending. I think we'll
yeah,
establish the character.
yeah. We'll get there eventually. So they find this just very obese man at
And
his
also shout out
kitchen.
to Rob Bowden for doing them special effects on the film.
Oh yeah, the effects are great. All the little tableaus, the scenes, how the deaths are staged, are something else. As it is, the production design in this film was amazing. But you're right, the
Yeah.
the special effects, the gore, it's very well done.
And also,
It's
this one of
very
these movies,
believable.
because I think because of budget restriction, they didn't have to show the girl. Also, Fincher's like, you know what? We just kind of focus on people's reaction, the way they talk about how the march is to make it more scary and grisly.
Yeah, I think it's grisly enough as it is. It was definitely talked about at the time. That's for sure. But
And you can see why people were passing on the project. They were saying, "I'm not doing this."
oh, it's very dark. It's very,
Yeah.
very dark and just kind of nihilistic, right? It's wow. It's which again, kind of that 90s theme. It's people were kind of in that mode at the time, especially younger folks who at the time would have been probably older Gen Xers than I am. It's so
They're
funny.
parents right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Well, most of them are parents. Some of them are grandparents,
And
believe
they
it or
already
not.
have, children right now. Well, I'm pretty sure they're seeing this for the first time.
Yep. So, yes, they start investigating the scene. Somerset finds that the man is bound both at his ankles and his wrists. And at this point, Mills is kind of walking around taking notes in a notebook, and he's being just a little too chatty. Somerset even tells him just to be quiet at one point or another here. He notices a big bruise on the back of the guy's head, kind of in the shape of a muzzle. It's pretty clear it was from a gun. But there's a moment after Mills discovers this bucket of vomit under the table where the medical examiner enters the scene, and Somerset tells Mills to, or he asks him, would you please go outside and help the officers question the neighbors? And Mills is so angry in this moment, and he flips his light up in Somerset's face and just stands there and stares while Somerset very slowly takes his glasses off and then stares back at him. Eventually Mills acquiesces there, and then the medical examiner comes in and lifts the guy's head up from the spaghetti. It's disgusting. He's like, yep, he's dead. And yeah, cut to the car ride away from the scene where, Mills expresses his displeasure at what he was asked to do because he's got the experience. He hasn't been, knocking on doors and talking to neighbors in many years at this point.
But he didn't have experience handling this type of crime scenes.
Yeah, he's worked homicide for 5 years, he told him. But
I don't think he's where he come. What is it they come from? I think they say it was it Pennsylvania.
I don't think they really do not mention specific cities in this film. It's meant to just feel like any big, busy, crime-ridden city. And that's by design.
And also because we do know that Mills actually, I think maybe he says it later in the film, it's like he came to the city because he wanted to do bigger crimes, bigger homicide crimes.
Yeah, he wanted to make a name for himself.
And Morgan Freeman knew, it was something new, like, hey, you're not ready yet. He knew, I think from day one, like he's not ready yet to be.
Yeah, I think that is yes and no. I agree with Somerset with that. It's I think he's just, kind of busting his balls a little bit, which Mills kind of calls him on in this car ride. Somerset wanted him out of there basically because he was sick of hearing him run his mouth while he was trying to, look through
I
things.
think everyone will.
Yeah.
Even the dead body will come back out and tell him to shut up and go back dead.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The medical examiners seemed, cordial enough with him. They introduced themselves.
Maybe it's
to
like,
each
I
other,
had this type of people in my life. I can handle it.
Yeah. But so Mills, calls him on it. And, essentially it's a point taken from Somerset. And cut to the morgue where they're hosing down the body. And this is where
who's this actor who plays the
he's familiar to me, and I can't place him.
I think it's Reg E. Carthy, something like this. He was in House of Cards, and the last thing I saw him was in Luke Cage. He played Luke Cage's dad in season 2.
Okay.
So he was also in
it totally makes sense that he would be in House of Cards, though.
The father of Johnny and Sue.
Yeah, because, at the end of the day, Fincher's like a lot of these directors that have their stable of actors that they pull from quite often.
How many times he had Holt McCarthy in this movie?
Many. But it's... I really do appreciate directors that do this, that use the same cast over and over because they enjoy working with them. They know what they can get out of them, and it shows. They develop really good relationships with these people. So the guy at the morgue, he basically explains that this guy was forced to eat himself to death and was basically kicked in the stomach, and his stomach burst and he died. It's horrible. It's we get a little bit of fat shaming from Mills here, and Somerset calls him on. It's like, please, this guy was a shut-in. I mean, it's clear he did not get out of this home. He was in a bad way. It's horrible. But God, what a way to go too. It's any of these people. Really, throughout this film, these people die in really, really horrible ways.
Except one person, we'll talk about it later.
Well, yeah, we'll get there.
Who.
Yeah, we'll get there. So enter R. Lee Emery as their captain. God, what a great actor. And yeah, they're basically back upstairs in the bullpen, or no, they're in his office, basically letting him know what they found. And Somerset, at the end of the day, he considers
it's like,
this,
I don't want this type of case for my life.
Yeah, he considers it just a little bit too extreme. He figures this is just going to go on and on and on. He wants no part of it. And
he said, don't give it to Mills. He's not ready yet.
Yeah. And Mills, he's like, well, you're retiring, so go fuck yourself, and I'll take this gladly. And instead, the captain does the exact opposite. He reassigns Mills to, whatever next comes up, and tells Somerset he's stuck with this thing. He's got to see it through, at least till the end of the week. And cut to the following day. Then we're at the office building where a big-time defense attorney in this city has been found dead in his office. The great
Richard Roundtree.
No, you're thinking of the DA.
Attorney.
Yeah. But he's holding a press conference downstairs. The DA, played by motherfucking Shaft himself. Yes. It's a small role, but he brings a lot to it. I like it.
More than he did in Steel.
Yeah.
Theodore Rex also.
So we have Mills kind of slipping in behind the press conference, and a reporter clearly can tell that he's a detective, so she chases after him, but she's kind of kept at bay, and he ignores her. He makes his way upstairs and into the office, just kind of avoiding everybody. He's not trying to make eye contact with anybody, and he bursts into the office with this, big amount of bravado, just kind of shoving the doors open. And he looks around for a minute and he tells the couple of crime scene guys to go get a coffee so that he can just kind of sit and take it in. And he turns up the volume on the TVs that are playing in the office. So he's watching the press conference that's taking place downstairs from up there on the TV. And the look on his face is like, oh shit, what have I gotten myself into with this? You can tell he wants
told him,
this.
Like, you're not ready.
Yeah, he wants this, but you can tell he feels just a smidge overwhelmed because when the press conference is essentially done, he's just standing in the middle of all this gore. We've got the overhead shot of greed written in blood on the carpet.
It fits for him because he got greedy. And it fits like that's what he got for being greedy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fitting. It's fitting. But yeah, you have these scales set up with a bunch of gore sitting on one and then just blood everywhere. It's funny to me. You see him take his coat off and his notebook and kind of throw them in the corner, which makes sense to me, trying to preserve the scene and everything, but he's not wearing the crime scene booties. He picks up the remote without a glove. That feels weird. He even sits down in the chair and spins around a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that's our own fault for watching, crime scene procedurals throughout all the years, like also, CSI and everything.
Also, I think some of the crime scenes that they take, I think, cops' fingerprints, they have them ready. So it's like,
so that they're ruled out.
So that might be one excuse, but same time, you're right. Like, he's not preserving anything because what was it? Somerset, you saw him like when he was investigating gluttony. He actually was preserving like this crime scene and was being careful.
Yeah, there's a lot of detectives that'll like keep their hands in their pockets, so that it helps to, keep them from touching things, because sure, you're just kind of naturally inclined to go pick something up, right? And you kind of see that a little bit as Somerset's walking around. He does keep his hands in his pockets quite often. But yeah, back to this particular scene. Yeah, Mills looks a little concerned. But
moreover, what he got into than the actual crime scene.
Yeah. And then back at the precinct, we've got a janitor scraping away at Somerset's name on his office door. And the captain comes in to tell him about the greed case and just to kind of chide him a little bit about retiring. Just what are you going to do with yourself? Honestly, this is your life. You're amazing at it. You're a pain in the ass to us, but also we're going to miss you and we're going to miss having you do the work that you do. What are you doing with yourself? Right. And
you need a cop like to sit because most of like you mentioned, the cops in the prison, they don't care about what's happening. It's like they're not great cop like he is. Like, hey, we need at least the one cop who can at least, give us some good points because knowing how the police are in the US and how corrupt they are, it makes sense.
Not all of them, thank God, but yes, there is a good amount, sure. Absolutely.
Especially where they were have the tone of the movie. This fits exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, you got that right. You got that great little comedic bit of Somerset telling the janitor to stop what he's doing because the scraping at the door is just irritating. And they have this conversation about a killing that, I don't know if the guy actually died, but there was a guy attacked like a block away from the precinct. He was mugged. And not only was he mugged, but when he was on the ground, the attacker, for whatever reason, decided to take out the guy's eyes just because he could. And, just how horrible this is. And he can't deal with this any longer. And, they wrap up their conversation and the captain's like, oh, by the way, the morgue just sent this up. We've got these little plastic pieces that we found in the gluttony victim's stomach. And
And that's still we haven't found his gluttony, but he got suspicious when he told him about Greece and who died.
yep,
That made him get suspicious.
yep, yep. So he starts thinking about things, and yeah, these little plastic strips. That's interesting. And Somerset,
He goes to
yeah, at this
Gluttony's
point,
house.
he goes to back to the crime scene there, and he's just kind of looking around, and the fridge kicks on, the compressor, and that draws his attention. So he just opens the door to take a look inside, and with the light from the fridge spilling out, he notices this
The ground.
odd little pattern on the floor, the linoleum, these strips. And he thinks, uh-oh. He opens up the little evidence jar and he pulls out a couple of the plastic strips. And of course, they fit perfectly into these grooves. And so he pulls the fridge forward, and that's where he finds gluttony smeared on the wall in, we come to find out, in Greece. And a little note with a quote from Milton from Paradise Lost written back there. And I love the little quick cut of him ripping the note off of the nail, switching right back to the precinct where he is delivering his findings and to the captain. And Mills is sitting at his desk, not really part of the conversation necessarily, but obviously intrigued. The little comedic bit here of the captain answering the phone that won't stop ringing. He's like, "This is not even my desk," and just immediately hangs
That
up.
made me laugh.
Yeah, I've always liked that little bit. God, Arlie Emery is such a great actor, mostly a character
Was that
actor.
improvised? That's that part.
It wouldn't shock me, but knowing, Fincher is one of those that takes many, many takes, right? He's kind of known for this. So I don't know. I don't know if
Especially
he
now with
lets,
digital, cameras now.
right.
He doesn't
Yeah.
do film now. He just
Yeah. You don't have to worry about wasting film necessarily, just memory cards and hard drives. But yeah, I'm curious how much he lets his cast improvise because of how notorious he is for the multiple takes. So I don't know. But this is where Somerset, brings up that he's convinced that these cases are actually related. He holds up the photo of gluttony smeared in grease. He walks over, grabs the photo from Mill's desk of greed smeared on the carpet in blood. And then he brings up, hey, there's 7 deadly sins. And, we've started with gluttony and with greed, but ultimately, he runs down the others there, and that
lust, pride, wrath, and envy. So Joe, you got 5 more victims left.
Yep. That's exactly what he tells him. You can expect 5 more of these, he says. And then he just kind of walks off. He's like, I can't do this. And the captain calls after him, trying to get him back. And he's like, hey, he wanted it. Let him have it, gesturing towards Mills. Mills is like, I'm all over this. Yes, please give it to me.
But we know that he doesn't, especially after his reaction. It's like, oh God, another one? And then he was like, oh, that means I have to get now 5 more victims? No.
Yep. Cut to later that night, and Somerset's at home. I think we're introduced to the shot with him throwing his switchblade into his dartboard, which is just cool as hell.
I think later. Was it not later?
No, I think you get one hit of it, and then he's just kind of stepping around his apartment, and then he grabs his coat and heads downstairs and gets a taxi. As he's pulling away and the driver asks him where he's headed, he makes that comment as he's looking at, some cops dealing with somebody ODing on the sidewalk. He says, anywhere but here. But actually he's going downtown to the library, where
the only quiet place in the city.
Yeah, probably actually, where he knows the security guards and they let him in because clearly it's late at night and it's after hours and they're all just playing poker. But
knowing him, I think he's a regular. I mean, he's knowing how knowledge he is. So I think he knows about the library.
Yeah, I love his interaction with them, and they put on some what is it? Air on a G string or something like that. I
They
fuck.
play, I think an op something like
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
classic.
I'm butchering it. It's but yeah, it's a cool scene. I love that the scene is cutting back and forth. You got the two planes of action of no, action of Somerset doing his research through all the bits of classic literature that talk about the seven deadly sins. You know, like you've got Paradise Lost from Milton, you've got Chaucer with Canterbury Tales, and all these others. And he's, doing his research. He's
That's
copying,
actually Dante, like Inferno.
yeah, Dante's Inferno. And you've got Mills back in his apartment poring over the photographs from the crime scenes, trying to make heads or tails of it. And all the back and forth is kind of cool. And
And his wife is looking at him. It's like, I think she
yeah,
knows, like, he can't handle this.
yeah, and she probably knows better than to go hang out with him while he is working on stuff like this because of, all the horrific shit that she's likely going to see. But also, he probably doesn't,
Doesn't want her to come. And he would
I'm
get
sure,
mad at her.
yeah, I'm sure he doesn't want her around while he's dealing with this stuff either. She's keeping her distance, but you can see the concern on her face. And Somerset makes a reading list for Mills and drops it off at his desk at the precinct. And cuts to the next day, Mills running through the rain into his car, and he's having a hard time reading through. I think he's trying to read Paradise Lost there, and he lets out some really horrible homophobic shit about the author. And we get a knock at the window, and yep, we've got this other cop coming to his rescue,
like short notes.
by every poor student's savior, Cliff's Notes. Yes. Yeah, anybody who's not the best English student in the world, there you go, or English literature student rather, or American literature, or really literature in general. There's Cliff's Notes for that. They'll help you get through if you're having a hard time understanding a particular piece, but you want to make very, very sure that you're not outright copying that stuff, because most English teachers, they know. But
Especially now, there are tools that they can scan dog files and see.
it, but even back in the day, they knew.
They knew. I mean, did you see the person, the way he talks and speaks, and then you see the language, he was like, oh yeah, he didn't wrote this.
Yep. So next up, we've got the scene with Mills moving into Somerset's old office, and Somerset, of course, is still in there because he's working out his week. But I love how this shot is framed. So basically, the whole of the office takes up the entire frame of film. It's perfect. We get some great Fincher shots in here of, again, the camera following the person's body as they move, in, out, back, forth. It's great. It's great. It's not as prevalent as in his future films, but you can see him developing this style in this film, and it's great. The phone rings, and also, before we even get to the phone ringing, we see Mills kind of slipping his stack of Cliff's Notes into the desk drawer in the knee well. He doesn't want Somerset to know that
he wants to show off. It's like, I'm pretty sure he knows Somerset knows everything.
Yeah. I'm sure.
If you wrote this Cliff Notes for him.
Yeah, I'm sure that Somerset has eyes in the back of his head. He knows. But the phone rings, and it turns out that, it's Mill's wife. She wants to speak with Somerset.
What?
This is a great bit of levity in this film right here. This whole office scene where, she wants to talk to Somerset. He passes the phone over, and, they have a quick little conversation, and then he hands him back the phone, and Tracy's already hung up. It's great. And she's just kind of fucking with her husband there just a little bit. It's fun. It's fun.
It's like what she tells you is like, I'm invited for dinner.
Right. And Mills is like, how's this? What? This is all just going over his head at this moment. And yeah, cut right to them arriving at Mills' apartment there after work. She answers the door and she introduces them to each other with their first names because she's so used to her husband using last names like you would in this type of work. And they, of course, call each other by their last names. But yes, it's William Somerset and David Mills. And he's like, yeah, all right. Ha, ha, ha. You got me. And he walks off to go check on the kids, who are actually their great big dogs that they've got in this little,
Looks like he cares more about them than his wife.
well, I don't know about that necessarily, but he's going to have a good time rolling around with the dogs on their newspapers. It's that looks messy, but while he's doing this, you've got Somerset and Tracy getting to know each other, and their conversation, their back and forth is great. I love it, and she's just, you can tell she's not used to having a conversation with another adult. It's been a while because, she catches herself like not being horribly polite. There's the comment about how,
like I said, Somerset, he's supposed to be like a nice guy. Like, and I like the other people. I think maybe she knows like the cops. Maybe David hangs up with her, or maybe are not as friendly as him.
Yeah, that could be. From the old. Yeah, it's very clear that he has, what they call home training, because he compliments her on what she's cooking. And she's like, oh, yeah, I know. And then she catches herself and she thanks him because, she's just not used to, this kind of
It's rare to see polite people also these days.
Yeah. Even today. Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, I deal with that at work all the time, let me tell you. So they talk while Mills rolls around on the ground with the dogs, and they got some jazz playing in the background. It's fun, and she offers him a drink, and he's like, "No, I'll wait for dinner." And as they talk, he's taking off his blazer as well, and she notices his gun in the holster, and she kind of freezes a little bit. And he's like, "No, I won't wear it to the table. Don't worry." And she makes a comment about how she just, she doesn't like guns. She's, not used to it even after all these years. And he makes the comment back that neither is he. And this will come back later in the film as well. But cut to them, kind of at the, they're kind of done eating. The funny thing is, my folks had these dishes. A lot of people had these specific dishes, this pattern with the apples and the leaves and stuff on them. It's funny because I think they still actually have those dishes. I'll have to remind them of that. I wonder how much they worth are. Oh, not very much. They were a pretty common pattern, but that said, yeah, it's just funny to me because they were prevalent in the 80s and the 90s. But yeah, they're kind of having their conversation about why he's leaving, and then he transitions that to how is Tracy liking the city, and it's clear she's not happy, but she's trying to put up a brave face in front of her husband. And this is where the entire apartment starts to vibrate because the subway is going by, and Mills starts cursing like crazy about the realtor. It was funny. We liked him instantly. We thought he was very efficient. He brought us by, but only in like, in like 5-minute intervals. And now we know why, because it's located right next to a subway line. And Somerset, it makes that crack about, a soothing, relaxing, vibrating apartment. And they all keep a straight face for the just tiniest minute until no reference at all. It's just funny to him. And,
Uh,
and ultimately, Somerset kind of cracks and they kind of fall out a little bit. And, they're all rolling at this line. And then Mills, at the end of the day, it's like, yes, it's funny, but also, it's not fucking funny. They have to live with this rattling all the time. And can you imagine trying to sleep? Oh, God.
yeah.
It's horrible.
I
But
saw my cousin Vinny. I know how it is.
yeah,
They make the mention.
yeah, it's pretty rough. So yeah, let's see here from
To be fair, there are
here.
more noisier places than a train.
Yeah, I suppose so. You could be located next to a fighter base or,
Yeah,
or an airport or something like that.
yeah.
You'd have the same exact problems,
Mhm.
but possibly worse. Um, and yes, we cut from here to Mills and Somerset, continuing to have a couple of drinks and look over the evidence and kind of figure things
I
out. I
love the
think,
part where he was like, "Can you give me?" Ashley gives him wine, and what's it, a
yeah.
beer glass? It was like, "What did he give me?"
Well, it's established earlier that Mills is a beer drinker, but Tracy and Somerset are having wine with dinner. And when Mills offers him a beer as he's getting up, because he's going to get another one,
Yeah,
Somerset's like, wine, if you have some still. And you see in the background as they're talking about, the two prior murders, you see Mills opening another bottle and filling this water glass, essentially just
yeah,
filled to the brim with wine. He's clearly not somebody who's familiar with it because, of course, wine has a higher alcohol content than
yeah,
beer, and that's why you typically have smaller glasses of
yeah,
it. And it, Somerset doesn't even really notice because when he's handed the glass because he's so engrossed in what they're looking
yeah.
at. At this point, they're
He's like, "This is more grossing than the crime scene."
yeah. It's not till a little bit later that he finally looks at the glass and he has kind of a funny reaction to it. But yeah, they're trying to look at things in a new angle. Now that they have this
Yeah,
idea, this theory that the killer is, possibly preaching with the seven deadly sins, let's take another look at all the evidence. And yeah, they get to the point where it's like, I don't know, it's late. He's got to walk the dog still, but then they notice something. They notice the photo of
of
the
the wife.
lawyer's wife, how her
Mm,
eyes are rimmed in blood,
mm,
and her photo was turned around, staring at something not as you would normally keep a
mm.
photo like that on your desk, looking
Yeah,
back at the seat. So they figure maybe she saw something. Maybe the killer is trying to say that she knows something or has seen something. So she's in witness protection. And they go to talk to her. It seems really late at night to be doing something like this.
yeah,
But ultimately, they, wow, do they ever work her up? And rightly so. She's been through the
yeah,
ringer, of course, with all
yeah.
this, and she's just breaking down, sobbing.
And,
And
and
I,
they felt covering that dead body on the
I know they've
front of.
got post-it notes on the photos over
Yeah,
her husband's body, and you can still kind of see him through them. It's not good.
I mean, it's not
Um,
just even the you can see the greed, the blood, everything
yeah,
else.
there's all
Not
the
just
gore everywhere. It's not wonderful, but and I think Mills is feeling a bit bad about how he's handled this conversation with her, as he and Somerset are kind of talking off to the side. But then all of a sudden, she does notice something. There's a photograph of a painting on the wall, and she realizes that it's kind of an abstract painting, so only somebody familiar with it would know this. But she realizes that it's upside down.
yeah,
So they go back to the office then that night. There's this great exterior shot of the building with the
yeah,
light in the office flipping on. I
yeah.
love it. It looks cool as hell. Um,
Mm.
And yeah, they pull the painting off the wall, and they realize that whoever did this actually moved the fasteners with the wire so that they could hang it upside down and everything would look normal. This is where Somerset pops out his switchblade, and Mills
It's
is
like,
like, "What the fuck is that?" It's because they're not exactly super legal, and he's kind of shocked that Somerset would even have something like this. But he takes the backing off the painting, and they don't find anything inside. They flip it down on the ground, and he's kind of looking over it. And Mills makes that crack about, well, he didn't paint the fucking thing. But Mills just he's kind of pacing back and forth. He's upset about the situation. He makes that crack about, hey, look, this is us. This guy's fucking with us. He's fucking us right now. And Somerset, meanwhile, is just transfixed by what could be behind the painting, because there's got to be some reason, right? And he brings out a little, bit of powder, and he brushes on the wall there, and he starts to find fingerprints.
yeah,
We don't exactly see what the fingerprints are, but he's like, call the print lab. And that great kind of quick cut to the perspective of the wall being, kind of brushed and, with the compressed air to blow away the extra powder from the forensic guy. It's such a cool looking shot. Yeah, this is where the camera pulls back out, and we've got "Help Me" written in prints on the wall.
yeah.
And you get that shot from the trailer, probably. I seem to remember it from the trailer back in the day of Mills saying to Somerset, honestly, have you ever seen anything like this? And just Somerset very, very quietly saying no.
And knowing that what type of city he lives in, that's what hills it is, so that's not least worse than this.
And I'm sure he's seen plenty of death, but nothing like these tableaus that this killer is staging. I mean, this is Hannibal Lecter level shit. It's interesting. Cut to back at the precinct where they're running the prints, and the technician tells them to take their pondering elsewhere, because he's annoyed by their back and forth, and it often takes days for them to get a hit in this database.
I don't know how it is right now, but yes, it does not take just 1 second. It takes days for fingerprints and DNA to come out.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You've got all these federal databases, and there's so many that's got to be sorted through that it's not exactly going to be instant, as you often see in some crime shows. But cut to them in the hallway on this couch that evening, kind of talking about the situation. And,
He even tells him, like, did you promise what you said up to the wife about the crime? You're going to catch the bad guy?
Yeah, and he means it. He means it. He plans to do it, but at the end of the day,
it's like something a mistake that cops always make. It's like, don't say this.
Yeah, and then that's kind of where Somerset is, getting at with this conversation. How at the end of the day, we often are just kind of cataloging this stuff and seeing something through. It's very rare that we're actually catching somebody before something else happens. But Mills kind of balls up his jacket under his head as a pillow, because they realize it's going to be a long night. And cut to the next day, and their captain is waking them up because they've got a match.
Yeah.
And I love how also throughout the night, Mills has kind of shifted, and he's like smashed up against Somerset's shoulder, and he kind of pulls away in disgust again. Again, his character, with his little, it's kind of part
he
of
does
his
it
character.
later also in the film.
Yeah, yeah, and the pizza place. But yeah, so we've got the captain giving his spiel about who they found. It's this guy who had been arrested in the past for diddling little kids, and how ultimately his rich family helped get him off with the help of his lawyer, who was Eli Gould,
Agreed with.
the greed victim. Yep. So they figure it's all connected. This is their guy.
Well, apparently,
And
I think I read somewhere he's supposed to be the lawyer on Robert Shapiro, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
wow. It wouldn't shock me if that's who they were basing this on. But yeah, yeah. I mean, let's put it this way: defense attorneys do not have a wonderful reputation with the police. It's they're, and we see that later with the other attorney. Ultimately, they're seen as people that get paid highly to get people off. But yeah, they're assembling a SWAT team again, led by John C. McGinley. This is before his turn on Scrubs. Very different
Was this
character.
before or after on Deadly Grounds?
That I can't recall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think played the henchman.
as much as I like a lot of the earlier Steven Seagal films, there was a point where I just kind of gave up on his shit, and then definitely a point where I gave up on him. But
when he did that reggae song.
oh Jesus,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know what? I thought that people, the listeners and the viewers, he did
Yeah.
the reggae music, and it's exactly what you think it is.
Yep, and now he's all about his good friend Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
So yep.
And
Enough of Seagal. So yeah, I like John C. McGinley in this role. He's good.
he was also in Highlander. I forgot he was also in the second one. Remember?
Was he?
Yeah, he was. I
can't
think the
remember.
corporate guy who actually, who befriends what's his name
Oh,
from Scanners, Michael Ironside.
yeah, yeah. That seems very familiar now. Okay. God, I need to look up what else he's been in. But yeah, Mills and Somerset, they ride along.
He was in
As
Point Break.
yes, yep, he was definitely in Point Break as well.
He's done a lot of action before he became a comedy guy.
Yeah, it's funny. But yeah, they ride along behind the different SWAT vehicles here, and in the car, they've got this great conversation about, have you ever taken a bullet? Have you ever drawn your weapon? Have you ever fired your weapon? And Mills has this story about, him, being part of one of these, kind of like hostage rescue type teams, and or armed response teams, or whatever you want to call them, or SWAT or whatever, and how they burst through a door, and the buddy to the side of him got hit in the arm, and how, or he got hit essentially, and how he like basically saw him spinning around in slow motion, and how he rode with the guy in the ambulance, and how he died right in front of him, and he can remember all of these things, but he can't remember the guy's name, and it's driving him nuts. And you can see Somerset from the back seat. He's listening intently. He's clearly interested. But just the expression on his face of, yeah, you are somebody who's trying to, you mean well, and I get that, but also you may need to at some point stop meaning well. I don't know. There's a lot of emotion on his face. And then we've got everybody pulling up to this building. It's, for a group that's trying to, storm somebody's apartment and take him, they're very loud, aren't they? Don't they have sirens going and everything? Or at least just the screeching tires of all these vehicles pulling up there. It's just funny to me. But a great scenes of, I'm not great about narrating action here, but ultimately great scenes of them entering the building and
Yeah.
storming up through the
Checking every door secret,
stairs.
then
Yep.
until they see the bid.
Yep. The score is great in this as well. It's just, just kind of pounding. And they breach the apartment and, oh, you will never look at those little pine tree car air fresheners the same way again after you see these scenes, because you've got rooms filled with these things to help with the smell. They see a figure in a bed that's kind of framed in the open doorway and
Yeah.
covered by a sheet, and SWAT. They call out to them to put their hands up and nothing happens. And they, slowly approach and they pull back the sheet. And there is the most emaciated, disgusting body
Yeah.
that they think is dead.
Yeah, it's a callback to the first crime. If you remember, he's like, "Did you check to see if the vital? They didn't check the body."
Right. Again, they just
Yeah.
expect that this thing that they found is dead. And very much thing is an apt descriptor, right? Because you've got all these sores and it's just horribly emaciated
And his arm is cut off,
discolored.
which explains why his parents were in the office.
Yeah, he's only got the one hand, and and the SWAT leader, calls for the detectives to get in there. Again, something from the trailer of, you want to take a look at this, and they come in, and well, that's Victor, and he is in some really
the word
rough shape.
sloth written on top.
Yes, we also have sloth smeared on the wall above the bed. And they've got a box filled with all sorts of stool samples and urine and fingernails and hair. And say again?
How does he represent sloth? Because I understand the other victims. How does he represent sloth?
I think insofar as the killer spent a year killing him, because there are photos that date all the way back to 1 year ago that very day. And they show a horrible time lapse of what has been done to this guy. It's pretty rough. And then we've got...
Basically, he slowly was killing him. That's more like, not punishing him, because he's more like punishing the people than killing them.
Something like that, yeah. And we cut to the SWAT leader leaning over the guy's face and whispering that he got what he deserved. And because, again, this dude was a pedophile and a drug dealer. And this is where the guy just bursts awake in the most horrifying manner. It is one hell of a good jump scare.
He didn't tell them, Fincher, I think, didn't tell the actor that he was going to do this. It's like, this is just the fake body. They all thought it was the actual fake body.
So similar to Alien with the chest burster, right? They didn't know what they were going to experience. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Because, they all fall backwards and, just knock shit over, backing away.
Also, I love the fact that if you notice that everyone is like, they thought by killing, they're gonna reach the kill him, and someone says like, stop, call an ambulance.
Yep. Yeah. So they scream for an ambulance, and cut to Mills and Somerset in a stairwell of the building talking about what they've just found. And this is where we have the run-in with this photojournalist who snaps their picture, and Mills... this is after they have this conversation about, and Mills talks about how he feeds off of his emotions and how he needs that. And kind of similar to Pacino in Heat. He makes a comment very, very similar about that kind of thing. And so Mills gets into it with the photographer. He like smacks the camera out of his hands and tells him to fuck off. And they have their little back and forth, and he turns around to Somerset staring at him, and he's like, what? And he's like, nothing. It's just impressive to see somebody feeding off of their emotions, he says. And Mills is like, ah, come on, and he's just upset about the guy. And why is he even here? How did he get in here? How did he get here so fast? And Somerset makes a comment about how, yeah, these people pay cops for this kind of information, and they pay very well to be able to get here that fast and get the type of photograph and everything. Just one more commentary on, why he wants to get out of there and how corrupt everything is. I think
We already accepted from the beginning. Remember when he's like, he asked for how the kids showing things, like, who cares? Like, this shows you, like, they didn't care about the kids.
yep. We cut from here to the hospital. Pardon me, where the doctor is kind of telling them about, the state of this guy, how he's basically just functionally alive, and they're never going to get anything out of him. And
he tells them, like,
you could shine a flashlight in his eyes and it would probably kill him at this point.
He said now it's left for him is to wait for hell. Even the doctor seems like he's not.
Yeah, everybody's got an opinion on this guy because, again, drug dealer, pederast. But we cut to that evening, Somerset. He's at home and he gets a phone call from Tracy, of all people. And while Mills is in the shower, she's calling him because she needs somebody to talk to about something. And, basically, could they meet? And she has to get off the phone then quickly. And then the next morning, it's Friday. And if we haven't already brought this up, this film takes place in about a week. The first day is a Sunday, but the actual story with Mills and Somerset starts on a Monday. And here we are, it's Friday now, and they're at this diner talking.
So the whole movie is set in 7 days?
Yep. It's all kind of perfect like that, right? This movie is tied up in a neat little bow. Let's be fair. It's very well written. But seeing this diner scene again this morning as I was finishing up my notes, all I could think of is I could just kill for a good diner breakfast like that. Because they're usually fantastic, a greasy spoon like that. We'll cut to a disgusting pizza place later in the film, but this one, I'm sure, has some good breakfast food. And Somerset, he's very curious why he's been invited there. And it takes her a while to spit out why. She kind of fumbles around the idea that she was a teacher and she's had trouble finding work and how she can't stand the schools that are there. And he offers the idea of public schools. And then she finally.
If schools were that location, imagine the school in this city.
The public schools would not be good. And then she blurts out that, well, they're pregnant, and she is having a very hard time with that given where they're living. And this scene is so well acted between these two. He tells the story then about how he had a girlfriend quite a long time ago. I'm assuming like 20, 30 years prior, something like that. He was probably young, just starting on the force or something like that. And how, they got pregnant and, he just couldn't fathom the idea of bringing a child into that world either. And how he kind of whittled his girlfriend down to eventually having an abortion, and how he knows that was the right decision for them. But at the end of the day, there's, he says, like, there's not a day that goes by where I don't in some way regret it, in some way second guess what we did. And
I mean, no answer would have been a good answer for him.
Yeah. And he tells her, if you don't decide to keep this baby, you cannot tell Mills. You cannot let him know, because it's going to break him. But if you do decide to have the kid, then you just got to smother this kid with love. You got to do everything you possibly can to show this child that they are loved in a world like this. And, she's crying through this, and it's It's a
Do you
very
think maybe because he was
emotional
looking at
scene.
her, he was like, maybe she might be one of the positive things in the city.
Yeah, I think
Maybe
to a
that's why
certain
he's like, you know
degree.
what? I didn't have the chance to be there. Maybe he was saying like maybe that's his second chance. Maybe he's saying something like, you know, I feel myself about maybe Mills and what's Tracy. Maybe they can have a second chance that I
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah, I think there might be a little bit of that there. It's just this wonderful bit of kindness from his character. It's so cool, and like I said, it's so well acted. It's This is Morgan Freeman in, just his prime of his 90s roles right
Yeah,
here. It's just so good. And
yeah.
honestly, Gwyneth Paltrow, had she done much before this film? This is like one of her first like well-known roles at the very
She
least.
almost was in Cool as Ice, but her dad stopped her. It's like, don't do this bullshit.
Oh, Jesus. Good for him. Some sage advice right there.
But he was all right having her do Shallow Hal.
Yeah, there is that movie, isn't there?
I think she did. I don't know when she did. She did this before or after Great Expectation with
Great
Alfonso Cuarón, but that
Expectations
movie I
was
know was
later.
not that good. Also,
That was later. Yeah, that was a very so-so adaptation of that book.
but
But
he
yeah,
himself even admitted Cuarón was like, yeah, it's not my best film.
no, and he's gone on to make up for that, I think, because he's another fantastic director, isn't he? But yeah, this is the moment where they're interrupted by Somerset's
Oh,
pager
she was
going
in
off.
Hulk in the first Hulk movie. Even
Oh,
Hulk, she played Wendy, the younger version
okay,
of Wendy.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
because
I
people
guess that
who
makes sense.
directed young actors, I heard Drew Barrymore before the whole thing's happening. That's
Yeah.
another kind of another story.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that one. But
Yeah.
Somerset gets a page and she stops him from running off to thank him. And it is so heartfelt. They have amazing chemistry as well as her and Mills. It's it, mm, everyone in this film is firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
It is so well acted. Um, so yeah, we
Especially
go
Brad Pitt
from,
because he wanted to go be out from all the pretty boy like
yep,
love
he
stuff. He wants to be
shines in
one.
this
See,
movie. He absolutely shines. Yes.
even
Um,
Fincher was like he was kind of hesitant. It's like, oh, should I cast this guy? And after meeting him, it's like I'm going to cast him.
yep. So back at the precinct then, where they're discussing the aftermath of Victor's rescue,
Yeah.
because that's what it really turned into, right?
Yeah.
Where they're just kind of sitting around waiting for something to happen, waiting for the next shoe to drop, right? And
That's how the police.
yeah,
Sometimes, like there's like sometimes if you want to catch, because we have to wait for his next crime.
it's a
And just like
waiting game.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
this is yeah.
Yep.
That's how it is. Even if you may not like it, but that's how it is. It's like
Yeah,
this
and
is what
that's what
happens.
Somerset tells him. This is the job. And they also have
Yeah.
that conversation where Mills calls the guy a lunatic, and Somerset immediately says, "Hey, it's dismissive to call this guy a lunatic. You have to understand how incredibly intelligent this person is, and to just write him off as a crazy person is to underestimate him, essentially." And boy, howdy, do they do
He
so?
got he got
Yeah,
his clue next. It's like, hey, you know what? Do you have money? Didn't you leave to
yep.
me to the pizza?
Yeah, at this point, Somerset is coming around to the idea that their suspect, has just perfectly orchestrated this thing. It's
Yeah.
He isn't going to slip up. They're just going to keep going on, collecting evidence and discovering new crimes, and it's just going to keep going that way. But there's a comment by Mills somewhere in here about the guy having a library card that makes something click in Somerset's head. And, he asks them how much money they have, and they're going on a field trip. Come on, grab your coat. So this is where they're at that horrible looking pizza place. And they make a comment about how it's probably had 50 health code violations since its last inspection. And this is where Mills makes another little homophobic comment because they're sitting on the same side of the table waiting for this guy. And this sort of disheveled looking dude comes in, sits down, and makes this kind of big
I don't know if you know who this guy is, but he was in Batman Begins. He was
and
I
Sons
think
of
Gordon's
Anarchy.
partner with the beard. Because now you didn't see him also with the beard.
Also Sons of Anarchy. Yes,
he was
a great role in
and
that
Too Fast
show.
and Furious, he was the guy who got tortured with the rats.
That's right. Yep, he's the rat torture guy. You're right. He's another great character actor. It's like Mark Boone, something or other.
It's something like the one it was.
Yeah, but
I think Nolan also had him in Memento, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think he's got a brief little part of that as well. You're right. But yeah, he comes into this situation all blustery and he makes the comment, only for you do I do this. And he just hands him a big wad of cash under the table and the guy just walks out and he takes the pizza slice as he goes. And Mills says after him, oh, help yourself. And he's just mad as hell about the situation because he doesn't understand what's going on. Cut to them. They're waiting in a barber shop because the guy tells him, give me an hour. And this is where Somerset finally lays it on the line. Okay, this is what's going on. And by me telling you this, I am absolutely trusting you. It's fun watching their relationship evolve as this movie goes on to becoming, much closer, actually becoming sort of partners, even though Somerset's going to be leaving. They have a much better respect for each other as this film goes on to the point where they're very friendly at a certain point. But yeah, this is where he lays it on the line.
I think I know what scene you're talking about.
Yeah.
Which I think it's clicked to me. I remember when I saw it, like, oh, that's what it's meant.
Yep. So ultimately he's like, okay, this guy, he's a friend of mine from the local FBI field office. And at the end of the day, the FBI has decided to keep records of certain flagged books from libraries, books like Mein Kampf and books about nuclear weapons and stuff like this. Basically books that most normal people are not going to be checking out unless you're like doing a paper on the subject or something. And, at the end of the day, you can use this database and cross-reference it with certain books and sort of figure out who's been checking out a lot of these books. And it isn't something that you can use as evidence because it's fucking illegal what they're doing, but it can at the very least point you in the right direction towards somebody.
At the same time, also knowing how the government is right now, he was like, you won't be surprised if this turns out to be true.
Yeah, well, that sounds less like an FBI thing and more of an NSA thing, but that's a topic for another time. Yeah. The NSA program Echelon and how that monitors communications of, unfortunately, some American citizens, but we won't get there. So this is the moment where the guy steps in, back into the barber shop and Mills is like, how do you know all this? And Somerset's like, I don't, and neither do you. And the guy just hands him an envelope and walks away.
I like that he said that while we're waiting for him, Somerset tells the Mills, go have a haircut.
Yeah, they're just kind of hanging out there in those extra chairs, the waiting area of the barber shop. But I love the little bit too where Mills just kind of leans out and waves to the guy. They've got their info at this point. And this is, I think, the scene as well in the barbershop where we get a hard R word from Mills. Again, product of its time. And
it fits the character.
It fits the character as well. Yep. But I'm glad it's something that a large segment of people have moved away from. Thank God, because we don't need that anymore. And this is where, they're going through their printouts that they've been given of these, different books that were on their list that have been checked out by different people. And they find, one particular person that seems to have checked all the boxes, including some writings by Thomas Aquinas, who had also written about the deadly sins.
The seven
And
deadly sins.
yep, and they're reading the name off of the list, and of course it's John Doe.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, well, let's go check it out. So I don't know exactly what their plan was here, other than just to have Brad Pitt, Detective Mills, be a smooth talker. He makes a comment about, hey, you're going to use your silver tongue here as we talk to this guy, because they have no evidence that links them to this address. I really don't know what their plan was. This is like the only major plot hole to me in the film. But at the end of the day, as they're standing there talking outside this door, and they knock a couple of times, Somerset looks up and he sees way down the hall, there's somebody who's kind of, the face is in shadows. They've got a big hat on. They're carrying a bag of groceries or whatever. And he kind of nudges Mills and he's like, kind of gives him one of those nods off in the guy's direction. And you see the guy pause looking at them. And then he keeps walking, but he's got the drop on him and he fishes out a gun and he fires on them. Oh, it's great. We've got this great chase scene that we're kicking off with this. Oh my God. It's good. Where Mills and Somerset kind of split up because Mills is, younger and a little bit more mobile, and he tears off after the guy, even while being shot at. And pretty taut chase as Somerset tries to go around another way to try to cut them off. And ultimately, we end up after, they burst through a couple of apartments and through what might be a theater or something. I can't remember. But you've got Doe off in the distance on a ladder from a fire escape. He's got something of a limp. Yeah. And it's probably from, tripping or something as he's running away. But it's definitely mentioned again later. We'll get to that. But we get him out on a ladder for a fire escape and Mills out on his own in the foreground. And you got that amazing shot from overhead with all the rain falling of Mills dangling off the ladder. It's so damned iconic. It's great. And you got their suspect sliding down the ladder and like bolting across this busy street in the pouring rain. And he's stumbling and rolling and almost hit by cars. And in every shot, his face is covered.
Injured his hand with that scene. Yeah. He said he'd do his own side. And then, because, a lot of people don't know, the movies, they don't show them exactly like the sequence or how they are filmed. They show like specific sequence, specific day. And they had some sequence like from the previous shot before this that were Brad Pitt, his arm was not injured. So they ended up, you notice that his hand was like in his pocket in some shot, and they're hiding also his hand.
Yeah.
So they end up also writing his injury in the film.
Perfect. It works because as he's sliding down on this ladder, it hits the end and that jostles him off and he falls through an awning into a pile of garbage on the sidewalk. And he gets up and he's climbing over cars and he's chasing after this guy and he chases him into an alleyway. And there's a garbage truck around the corner that's kind of filling up the bulk of the alley. And he's, clearing his way around it and looks up just in time to get his face whacked in with a tire iron. And again, in addition to the iconic shot of him hanging off of the fire escape with the rain falling, we get that awesome close-up of the gun in his face with the rain slowly trickling down. And also the shot from, kind of his perspective looking up at John Doe with, the gun, angled towards his head and up into his face with the rain falling. But of course, it's all in shadow the way it's framed, so you can't see who it is. But then Somerset comes barreling around the corner calling out for him, and the killer just darts away.
He tells him to go, if not mistaken, Miles, right?
No, he says no.
He said
That
no.
yeah,
I didn't hear it well, but I thought
yeah,
he said
Detective
go.
Mills is saying no kind of slowly, as in, he's not ready for this. He's not ready to die. But yeah, the
He was
killer,
not prepared. He knew it like that's not something he can do.
yeah, and the killer is definitely not ready to kill them as well because
Yeah.
he wants everything to play out the way he wants to play it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, Somerset arrives. He helps him up. He fishes his gun out of a puddle, and cut to inside the apartment building where Mills is all amped up and he's all bloodied. He hasn't had his
And he
wounds
tells them we
attended
don't
to.
have clear evidence. It's like, and it's like, how did you
Not that
came
they
in here?
really have clear evidence to question the guy anyways. They had absolutely no reason to. They would have had to make that up. And Mills is pretty amped up, right? He wants to kick this door in, and he's like, no, wait, we've got probable cause. And he's like, no, we don't, because we can't use anything that we got that led us here as evidence. And eventually Mills is like, okay, you're right. He backs away. And as soon as Somerset steps past him, he hauls off and kicks the door in. Again, trailer shot right here. And the funny line of, something along the lines of, well, I guess that takes that off the table or something like that, unless you can fix this. And Somerset's like, you stupid son of a bitch, because he has no idea. Yep, he has no idea how they're going to fix this or how they're going to be able to.
And then Miles was like, "Do you have any money left?" And he bribes a fake witness.
Yeah. There's basically they pay a homeless person to give a false statement, and unfortunately Mills has to kind of coach this lady through everything that she's saying there, and that would in no way be admissible because of him having to speak throughout all of that, and you can tell the look on the officer's face as he's taking
a corrupt officer.
Yeah, you can tell.
Was he one of the crime scenes? Also, if not mistaken.
I don't know about him, but the guy from the beginning of the film is there later at the precinct. But yeah,
I feel like he knew exactly which one of them is a corrupt cop or not. He's like, yeah, I'll have him come do it.
Yeah, the guy obviously knows what's happening, but he's taking the statement. They get a signature. They pay the person, so they're able to, enter the apartment then. And we get the police investigating this place, which kind of looks like this dude's been living in a Mark Romanek 9 Inch Nails video or something. And they find basically a large amount of money. There's notebooks filling shelves throughout the entire place, all handwritten.
You find that the book, like, what's it? What do you call it? They had the spaghetti, and then he had.
Well, yeah, he had these individual shrines to the first three victims, and then a fourth one of something that hadn't quite played out yet. So, yeah, you had the cans of spaghetti in the first one. The second one, you had some bloody law books from Gould's office. In the third one, you had a jar with Victor's severed hand. And you even have Somerset's reaction of Victor as he's looking at it. And then as Somerset comes to the fourth one, there's a photo of a woman.
And a receipt.
And a receipt to a leather shop. Yep. And, it's kind of clear from the photo that they've styled her sort of like a prostitute or something because, well, that's what she is. I think
someone even says, I think when he said first, like,
she looks like a pro. They say, yep, she's a sex worker.
And I think I read that's the actor who plays like the prostitute. That's actually, what I think, I don't know, she's a crew, I think, from the movies. Like, they need someone. It's like, I think the casting told her she looks. I think this crew member looks like a
well, you really only see her in a photo, and you see like maybe a limb or two later, but that's about it. But yeah, they find all this stuff. Bless you. We've got photographs everywhere in a makeshift dark room. You've got, like I said, there's like a cigar box just filled with cash, and
And he
it's
finds out that John Doe was also the photographer whom he
Yep,
attacked.
because there's the photo from lower down on the stairwell of Victor's apartment building. And, Mills calls out to Somerset to come into the room, and he's like, we had him. Who? We had him. The photographer on the stairs. We had him, and we let him get away. And, the look on Somerset's face is like, oh, shit. And I think this is about the time that the phone starts ringing. Yeah. And they have a hard time finding it, but eventually it is John Doe calling them to
Miles answer, and Somerset records it.
Yep. And Mills speaks with him briefly. Doe kind of speaks of his admiration for Mills. He even comments, because he's not exactly sure which one of them he's speaking to, but he's like, I apologize that I had to hurt one of you, he says. And he's like, he'd love to tell him more, but he doesn't want to ruin the surprise. And then he hangs up. And then you've got the, crew of forensics people standing in the doorways, staring and listening while all this is going on. And Somerset, checks his recording and, nods to Mills that they've got something. And then he stands up and tells everybody to get back to work. And that's, God, yeah. This apartment is something else as well. Yeah. This is where they're looking at all the different photos and everything, and they make the comment about how she looks like a pro, and they've got that receipt, and that's it's later that day they're following up on the receipt. They go to this shop, and shout out to the awesome Gravity Kills track playing in there. Love them in the mid-90s. I have no idea whatever happened to them. But the guy's like, yeah, I made this thing. I've got a photo of it right here. And you don't see the photo in this scene for good reason. But he hands him this Polaroid, and you see Brad Pitt's face, and he hands it to Somerset, who...
Because I've done crazier stuff.
Yeah. I thought this was for performance art, like somebody pees in a cup and they drink it on stage or whatever, performance art. And this is where their beepers start going off, and Somerset just pockets the photo, and the guy's calling out for it because, this is the photo from, basically what he would use for his portfolio to show off his work to prospective clients and so on. It's, what is he? He mutters under his breath about them being fucking pigs as they walk away. And cut to this, it's listed in basically like the Wikipedia page and everything else as a massage parlor. But at the end of the day, it's basically a sex club.
A brothel.
Well, not so much a brothel, but as a place where people can go to rent a room for an hour or two and, do their shit, take prostitutes without being, a big issue or anything. And you just barely see Michael Massey in his booth as they walk by him. They're led down the stairs. There's this music just pulsing away.
And even tell him, can't you turn off the music? Like, we can't find that guy.
Yeah. They're still trying to figure that out, how to turn off the music and everything. And, cut to this. The hotel, there's a room, and this cop is like freaking the fuck out. And he's like, yeah, you need to see this. And there's a guy who's covered screaming his head off. He's covered by a sheet, and there's obviously something very rigid pushing against the sheet. We don't quite know what that is yet. And a body that has been butchered like crazy on this bed that thankfully, again, you only see a limb or two, but there is gore everywhere. And cut to
prison.
We're basically back at the precinct, and you've got these dual interrogation rooms as seen from the other side of the one-way glass. And I love the back and forth. You've got, Somerset working with the poor guy who unfortunately was suited up with
have Somerset talking to him, because I feel like Mills would have made him.
He would have made it worse. He would have made it worse for sure. This guy is in clearly a very fragile state because he was forced to wear this knifed strap on and forced to have intercourse with this prostitute at gunpoint. And, she was tied down and everything as well. It's fucking horrific. And in the other room, you've got the guy that basically runs the massage parlor, who's played by Michael Massey.
I see a lot of people come in with
some guys bring suitcases full of stuff, he says. But, at the end of the day, no, I don't like my job, but this is life. Again, just one more, bit of evidence of this being just a horrible place to live. And, cut back to the other, they're going back and forth between the two interrogation rooms. And, you've got the poor guy who was forced to do this to this woman. I think
he was having an affair. He's cheating on his family, if I'm not mistaken.
They ultimately, he says that the guy, John Doe, asked him if he was married, and then he could see that he had a gun, and then he made me put this thing on, and he made me do this. And he's like screaming about how the gun was down his throat. And he was forced to do all this because Somerset asks him who tied her down. Was it you or him? But this guy just spirals. He's going to need years of therapy. That's for sure.
I wonder if you think maybe John Doe made him tie her up. Because we don't know what happened exactly.
At this point, with the gun involved, it does not matter. But it's horrible. And then that night, they're grabbing a drink at a bar, discussing their expectations for how this is going to end.
What did he say about empathy?
Well, ultimately, Somerset is telling Mills, hey, you got to set yourself up to understand that this guy is just going to be a guy. The only way you're going to be satisfied with how this plays out is if you catch this guy and he's Satan himself. And that's not going to be the case. He's just going to be another guy. And, at the end of the day, it's just going to go on, and we're going to keep collecting evidence, and this is going to be done, and we may never get him. And Mills is still trying to be, something of an optimist here, as much as you can be in this situation. And they just kind of agree to disagree. And, Mills makes the comment about how he's going to go home to his wife, thank you for the drink and everything. But at the end of the day, we got to keep going on this. We got to see this through, and I need to go home to my wife right now. And we cut to Mills slipping into bed with his wife and putting his badly damaged hand around her, and kind of whispering his "I love yous" to her as they drift off, and then Somerset back home in bed. And he's got the metronome going, but he just cannot tolerate this. He picks it up and he chucks it across the room.
He got tired of it.
Yep. He is not in a good way at this point.
Between the crime, the circle, and the city noise, etc. Everything going on, it's like he got tired of it. It's like, I don't need this.
Yeah, and he gets up, and this is where we get him kind of playing darts with his switchblade over and over. Can you imagine being the person that lives on the other side of that wall, having to hear that thunk?
I think he was throwing it, like he did the throwing. I think there was anything like effects. He actually did throw the knives.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. But it's oof. Yeah. He's in a bad way. And now we've got the following day, and we're inside of a 911 call center where John Doe calls in his latest victim. It's something along the lines of, I've gone and done it again. And we just go right to the crime scene from here, where this model
he just figured her face dead. And she's slowly.
Yep. He hot glued. Yeah, he hot glues a phone in one hand and a bottle of sleeping pills in the other. Essentially, you can call for help, but
you'll be disfigured for
you'll
life.
have your nose been sliced off. Or you can take these sleeping pills and you will have been your beautiful self forever. And she takes, unfortunately, the coward's way out there and kills herself. And they even make the comment here about how he cut off her nose to spite her face. And
that's actually the actress. She's now retired. She was in Universal Soldier 2.
Oh yeah,
she put, I think, Van Damme love interest in that film.
Huh. God,
yes, I think she's now retired right now from acting.
Interesting. We cut from here to an exterior shot of the precinct as they're heading back into the office, and you get them. You kind of hear snippets of their conversation as they're walking in, and in the foreground, we've got a taxi cab that pulls up, and somebody steps out, and you just see him from behind walking towards. And I think you see a little bit of blood on the back of his shirt or something, but. Yes, there is a man following them inside through the lobby of the precinct, and you hear him call out, detectives, just very quietly until they're heading up the stairs, and he just roars with detectives. And they turn around and they see this bloody man. And it's kind of a commentary, again, on this city, on this police force, that nobody is noticing this man covered in blood and viscera walking into this police
Another reason,
precinct.
you thought this might be a victim, but people's like, he's got to come and talk to
God, I don't know about that. But
I'm pretty sure just like the preacher, I'm not defending, but it's just like, we get a lot of people and bloody stuff. They're going to come and they're going to report something. Maybe that's why.
But typically they would be escorted by somebody, I would assume.
But knowing this person, that's didn't care.
Yeah, well, Mills pulls his gun on him, and so do many other cops, and they tell him to get on the ground. And the cop that comes over to cuff him, he's the cop from the gluttony scene that Mills gets into it with early in the film. And he cuffs the guy and then looks at his own hands covered with still wet blood. And he's like, what the fuck is this? And that's where ultimately John Doe says that he would like to speak with his lawyer.
Played by Richard Schiff.
Yes. Again, great little character actor moment there as well. So we've got Doe with his attorney in an interrogation room. And of course they can't listen to the audio because that's privileged, but you see the attorney filling out, a statement on a legal pad. And, John Doe keeps looking at the one-way mirror.
He knew that they're looking at him.
He knows that they're standing there. Of course they're standing there. Why wouldn't
even
they be?
Mills says, I don't buy him. He coming in. Even some says like, he's right, Chief. I don't buy him.
Yeah.
Coming like, this is the only time I agree with him.
Yep. They are on the same page. Somerset says for the first time, we are in absolute agreement on this. Cut to the DA's office where they're sitting down with this attorney, and he lays it out. We're going to cut a deal. And, either, Somerset and Mills escort Mr. Doe to an undisclosed location where he will reveal the final two victims, or he's going to plead insanity. Yep. And I love how they're all, we'd like to see him try. Have you been along for this ride? This dude is a nutball. Of course he's going to be able to get away with this. And Mills is very antagonistic here, and the captain's trying to keep him reined in, but can't quite do it. And unfortunately, they accept the deal. And we go from here to, and if you haven't been keeping score, it's envy and wrath that we're waiting on. We cut to the.
And you also mentioned like the shirt, like you noticed there were three bloods: John Doe, the pride victim, and a third
somebody else,
unknown person.
Yep. Yep. So we cut to the locker room where they're shaving their chests so they can be wired,
Yeah.
so the tape will hold. And you've got this great bit of camaraderie between the two at this point. They joke about, or Mills jokes rather,
Look, and you
about
can
how,
see that they're getting now close to each other. Like they're
yeah,
becoming
they're
more friends with
very
each other.
friendly at this point. It's,
Yeah.
and
And
you know,
I think what's in Miles, he's trying to tell Somerset, he's like, he wants to tell something. It's like, what? Never mind. I think he wants to tell him, it's like, hey man, I
yeah,
wish that things were better. And I think you think that he wanted, but yeah, I think
yeah, I
now he
think
never
he's
gets
about to
it.
say something about his wife, actually, and he just kind of stops himself and then makes the crack about, hey, if I shaved a nipple off by accident here, do you think it would be covered by workers' compensation? And
He's like, I'll pay for
they
you.
laugh. Well, yeah. He says, yeah, I suppose it would be if you were man enough to file the claim. They laugh. They have a good laugh about it. And he's like, yeah, I'll buy you a new one. Yeah. And there's little comments, and well, I don't even want to discuss that until we get to the end of the film because future spoilers. But yes, we go from here to
They get
Doug.
Mike, then they get sent out with the SWAT team.
Yep. They get all mic'd up and they pile into the car with Doe. That has to be uncomfortable. And you've got John C. McGinley in the SWAT helicopter lifting off from the roof. And they pull out very quietly as the DA is holding a press conference to help distract the media so that nobody will follow them. Ultimately, I mean, I'm sure that's the intention here because, as they pull out of the garage,
especially considering people that were chasing, they even hinted that they're chasing the police.
Exactly. And, they pull out of the garage and there's a bunch of news vans back there, but nobody follows them because of course they're paying attention to this press conference. So then we go to the most uncomfortable car ride ever. Can you imagine having to ride along in this one? Oof. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, during this drive, Mills is kind of needling Doe in a way to kind of get him to, give up more information or something, but also just because he's sort of antagonized by the guy. Doe essentially believes that he was chosen to send a message about, how ubiquitous and how apathetic people are towards, this sin. Essentially, how you see one of the 7 deadly sins on every street corner, he says, right?
Nobody's doing a thing.
Yeah, nobody does anything because everybody's just apathetic to it. Everybody's used to it at this point. Nobody cares. And how he's been sent to essentially wake everybody up. Doe, he's got no remorse for, any of the people that he's killed. It's Mills that says to him something along the lines of, you kill innocent people. And this is where John Doe kind of loses it on him about how, these people are not innocent. Only in a world this shitty, he says.
Actually, people.
Yeah.
In life also.
Exactly.
Nobody's perfect.
Not at all. And, but essentially, Doe takes it a step too far because, but he makes the comment about, only in a world this shitty would you call these people innocent. And he goes down the list of, you got the guy who's so obese that you'd point him out to your friend and laugh at him and you wouldn't be able to finish your meal if you saw him while you're eating. And, the lawyer, he makes a comment about how I bet you were, exactly how he made money off of lying with every breath, right? Getting all these people who are probably guilty off, and how, I bet you were both secretly thanking me for offing this guy. And, the drug dealer, the drug dealing pederast, and, the disease spreading whore, he says, and he just goes on and on about, how all these people are, not virtuous people at the end of the day. And yeah, he wants to shock and wake society up here. He continues to antagonize Mills at this point, who at a certain point does finally lose it on him, and he calls him a fucking t-shirt, a movie of the week, right? At a certain point, everything will die down and nobody will care. Yeah. And Doe's like, I beg to differ. What I've done is going to be, researched and thought about and puzzled over.
I mean,
and
how Netflix is with they're making all the documentary.
I know. Or
he's kind of
to a certain degree, he's right. Yeah. And how also Mills is going to be remembered after all of this. Oof, yes. Keep that in mind. But he ultimately leads them to this remote location. And this is where, if you would not be mistaken, or I would not feel badly about you if you were mistaken to think that this was New York City that this movie takes place in. But clearly it's this amalgamation of all sorts of, great, big, busy, unfortunately, crime-ridden cities, because it definitely has some LA aspects to it as well. It was filmed in LA, for crying out loud. But this kind of deserty.
Where did he film it?
I was pretty sure it was in LA for the most part. But also the area that they go to, this deserty area, definitely looks like areas outside of LA and Southern California. And you do not get landscape like this around New York, that's for sure. But you've got all these high tension towers, and he directs them to them because he knows that anybody following in a helicopter or anything like that will be able to get very close. They will be alone for this. They get there. The SWAT helicopter's got to hang back a little bit. They get out of the car, and there's this dead dog, and John Doe makes this crack about how he didn't do that. It's kind of hokey. I think I found it funnier when I was much younger, but it's a little cheeseball. You know what? If that's my only fault with this film, then that is a super minor fault. But yeah, he kind of leads them off to where they need to go. And it's at this point where they notice a vehicle approaching. And, Somerset's like,
intercepted.
Yeah, you watch him. I'll go deal with this. He hops in the car and peels off. And again, the music's just pounding like crazy. It's great. And he pulls off, and he tells the chopper to wait for his signal if there's anything. And he fires in the air to get the guy to stop. One thing I got to mention that I didn't bring up earlier that I love about it's so tropey and so probably overdone, but I absolutely love about this film is that you've got the young cop wearing his automatic, but then you've got the older seasoned cop wearing a revolver. And it's been done before.
Just what type of weapon do you use? People.
Yeah, there's personal preference to a certain degree, but also, it shows
you like the generation gap between the two.
Exactly. There's that. And also, an older, wiser cop would understand that, a revolver isn't likely to jam ever. It's a lot more reliable. But ultimately, a younger cop is probably going to want, the extra capacity, the more rounds available. But I find that very interesting. And even though it's kind of a trope, I still love it. But yeah, he fires his pistol in the air and he gets the driver to stop. And the guy's like, hey man, I'm just here to deliver a package. I was paid $500 to deliver this box at 7:00 to Detective David Mills. And, it's like, oh crap. He grabs the guy's wallet. And he sends him down the road at a sprint to be picked up by the cops.
He tells the helicopter to pick him up.
Yeah. He wants them to go, or somebody at least. I'm sure there's plenty of other vehicles that are following at a discreet distance. Yeah. They want, this guy to be picked up just so he can be questioned at the very least. But they want to get him out of there. He opens the back of the van, finds this box. And, immediately when it's mentioned that there's a box, the SWAT commander is like, we got a box. We need the bomb squad. It's, they're freaking out because they're expecting the worst. Right. And yeah, rightly so. Right. So yes, Somerset.
He pulls out his bucket knife. He starts opening the box.
Switchblade. And
he tells them, I noticed blood.
Yeah, because he sees a little bit of a drops on one of the inner flaps, and he opens it up, and we do not see what's inside the box.
Because you hear that sounds like this squeeze, like there's like something.
It's wet.
Bloody.
It's definitely wet. Yep. Wet. And you see the reaction on his face, and he's like, John Doe's got the upper hand, he says, and he starts running towards Mills. And you have to also understand, it's not like they have earpieces with some kind of a communication system. They're just being recorded. And at least the people in the helicopter, can understand what's going on. But, because I think that's being relayed to them. But, he's got to scream to Mills to put down his gun. And, he's just running after him. Meanwhile, Mills is like, what's going on? What's happening here? And this is where
John Doe tells him, like, I got envy of your life.
Yeah. It's like, you don't understand. Your pretty wife, Tracy. And Mills is like, the fuck you say? And it's like, yes, earlier today, I visited your home. I visited your wife. I wanted to taste a normal man's life. Almost said wife. That's, I'm sure he wanted that too. He wanted to play husband and, see what it was like to live that normal life, but it didn't work out. And so he took her pretty head. And now it's very clear what's in the box because now, Mills starts screaming the iconic, what's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
I think that they had Stallone, one of the actors for Mills.
Yeah. So,
there could be a difference.
Ultimately, John Doe is like, so you understand now, my sin is envy because I envied your normal life. And yours is to become wrath and take your vengeance on me. And I think this is about where Somerset rolls up and
he tells him, like, give me the gun. Don't listen to anything.
Exactly. And Somerset, he's trying to get John Doe to shut up because Doe keeps goading Mills. He wants to make this happen. He needs to make this happen. And
then he mentions the baby.
Yep. And right after that is when Somerset slaps the shit out of him. And
Morgan Freeman is known for his slaps.
Yeah, everybody understands. Oh shit, Mills didn't know. Yeah. And I think it's kind of clear to Mills in this moment that Somerset actually knew. And that kind of feels like a bit of a betrayal as well.
And he felt betrayed by him. It's like, I trust, and we were getting also close now because especially after seeing that scene in the locker rooms, like they were getting close and friendly. And he was about to admit him, like, hey, I wish we were more friendly, and maybe he wanted to apologize to him for how he was behaving.
Yeah.
That's why. And he was like, you've lied to me. I think that's kind of tropey. Like, we find out someone you trust you're about to get close to, he betrayed you, but he's like, can't believe this.
Yeah, it's and I think we're probably reading maybe just a little bit more into this than is actually there, or maybe not. I don't know. That's the wonderful thing about, a lot of films. They are very open to interpretation, and that's okay. It's there for you to decide. There is no definitive answer on this, right? But yeah, what does he tell them? Become your sin, become wrath. And then, the camera cuts back out to a wider shot and he just unloads on this guy, one in the head and another 5 rounds in the body. You get that little puff of blood through the air when he shoots him in the head too. That's super effective. So yeah. And then Mills just kind of walks away from it with Somerset staring in disbelief, and you got the SWAT team like, oh God, he shot him. And yeah, cut to probably a couple hours later with a huge police presence out here. And Mills is in the
They
back of
have
the
arrested
cruiser.
Mills, and then
Yeah,
the chief tells us like,
he
"We're
looks
going to take care of him."
complete shock, right? He is just dead-eyed, just completely out of it. And the captain's like, don't worry, we'll take care of him. And Somerset says something like, yeah, whatever he needs. And the
Yeah.
captain
He,
asks him, where are you going to be? And he says, around. And cut to kind of
do
a
you think he
wider
meant that
shot.
he's not going to retire, or is he
I
like me gonna retire,
I
be a
think it
private
can
eye
be read
something?
either way that,
Yeah.
sure,
Basically, he's not
he's
gonna
either
leave
going
this
to
suggestion.
stick
He's gonna be
around.
involved.
Yeah,
I
either
think.
he's going to stick around and he's going to be involved, or he's going to stick around for a while longer as a detective, or he is going to retire, but he's not going to necessarily leave and go work a farm like he had mentioned earlier. And you've got the wider shots with the helicopters circling and everything. And we've got, at this point, voiceover from Somerset saying, Ernest Hemingway once wrote, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." I agree with the second part, he says.
I think maybe that's why I was thinking maybe he sticks around. Maybe he becomes either private eye or just stays around, doesn't retire, because of his comment.
Yeah, well, cut to credits and David Bowie. I will say
That was David Bowie.
yeah, Heart's Filthy Lesson. That is some classic mid-90s David Bowie right there. He got into a very, very sort of grungy industrial vibe with his music.
I know he's experimented with music
throughout all the decades of his music. He has, yes, absolutely. And this was around the time he was getting to become friends with Trent Reznor as well. They did a song together, I'm Afraid of Americans, a couple of years later in 97 or 98. So I mentioned the helicopters and the great audio of them just circling around and everything, especially in this end scene where they're on the ground and the captain and Somerset are having their conversation and you can hear them in the distance. So you had mentioned to me how it sounds like there's a nice 4K release of this coming out before too long. I remember.
Fincher, like he was doing like a panel after with Steven Soderbergh. I think what's it?
Okay.
Is it Tripica? I think it's called the festival. They were talking. He said that he's working on a 4K release of 7.
Nice, very nice. It'll be worth it. Even though I watched this on Hulu myself, maybe you watched it on Disney Plus. I don't know, but
no, that's a New Line movie.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But ultimately,
I actually rented it. The film.
It looks fantastic, even in just HD on Hulu. But I'll tell you, in the late 90s or early aughts, there was just this nice DVD release of it where the slipcover looks like one of John Doe's notebooks. And it was a popular release at the time because it had a very nice DTS soundtrack, like multi-channel 7.1 on it, which was kind of a big deal for just a DVD back then. And I remember just how good the sound was. You felt like that helicopter was circling around your room. It was so cool. But this is
Fincher is the one who's overseeing this version. He's like, I think he says something like, "I don't want another person to miss it. I'm going to oversee it."
Very good.
I think he even poked fun on the Star Wars Special Edition. He's like, "I'm not gonna add new footage or extra something like this."
I don't think he's the kind of director who would, honestly. I think he's the kind of person who's only going to make sure that things look crisp and clean, that the audio is perfect, that he's got a good mix with everything. That if there's any restoration that needs to be done because something is degraded, I could see him doing that. But otherwise, no, I don't see him fucking around with adding scenes or anything like that. One thing I wanted to bring up for sure, because we did sort of tap dance around this as we were discussing the film. Repeat viewings, you have all these little teases about, what's going to happen to the wife, because there's all the little comments about, I'm going to go home and see my wife, or, Tracy this and Tracy that. And it's all leading up to what has already happened earlier in that day. it's again, wonderful movie for repeat viewings because you pick up on little things that were right there, and either what the
And someone,
killer's
in fact, I
doing, or
also read
yeah.
before we begin the show, it's like because we know that Kevin Spacey, like he plays John Doe, but they never marketed him, and he was actually a late addition to the film, and I think he said no, but Brad Pitt talked him into it because that's how some of the casting is. Brad Pitt talked him into them. Like I think Gwyneth Paltrow's the same thing,
Huh.
and
Well, and there's also the very well-known bit of trivia how they left his name out of the opening credits because they wanted
the
his
secret.
inclusion to be a surprise, but
Yeah,
they put his name in the end credits twice then as sort of
yeah,
making up for that, because as soon as the credits roll, he's listed as, and Kevin Spacey as John Doe. And then later on, when they get through the cast, he's in there as well. But
yeah.
yeah, it's such a shame because you hate it,
Mm.
but Kevin
Do you
Spates.
know who the Fincher wanted for John Doe, and why
Oh,
the reason why he wanted that actor?
who did he originally want?
Ned Beatty. Do you know why?
Oh, what, in the heat of the night, or?
No, he wanted that because he looked like the Zodiac girl in the drawings. Ned
Oh,
Beatty.
well, that's kind of perfect,
It's
isn't
funny
it?
enough, you end up doing Zodiac, which I think is
Yeah.
an underrated movie, but unfortunately that movie bombed.
Yeah,
That's actually a
Zodiac
great show.
Zodiac is fantastic. I'm still distraught
Remember,
that is
yeah,
my one fucked up episode where, a 2 hour wonderful conversation with Matthew Hidalgo where only roughly half an hour of audio is usable and a lot of it's pretty rough. It's so sad
yeah,
because that was such a good time and you hate to revisit it because, you know, that conversation's lightning on a bottle, right? You're never going to recreate it. So that's a shame. But yeah, Zodiac is pretty fantastic.
yeah.
That's one where I would love to see a nice Criterion cut of that film because they're
Because I
often
know he has the game on Criterion. That's his only. Oh wait,
that's
two
true.
movies.
I
One of
have
them
that
is no
one.
longer.
Yes.
He says Benjamin Button is no longer available at the Criterion, and he did the
Well,
game, which is still on, right?
yeah,
On
I've
Criterion.
got that Blu-ray Criterion release. Yes,
You
love the
know who
game.
played Michael Douglas' dad in the game?
Oh, I forget who.
What's his name? Charles Martinet, the voice
Oh,
of Mario. Yeah.
you know what? I think I have read that. I think I have
Yeah.
read that. Yeah. Um, but yeah, God, Seven is such a taut,
Yeah.
well
And I
put
think
together
Fincher, if we
thriller.
admit, like he feel like he didn't do a great job with the game also because he feel like I wish I did a better job with it.
Well, and I think that's
But
him
it's not like
growing
he
as a
hates
director.
like
He
he's
wasn't
like
quite the master that we think of him as back then, was he? It's he was still getting there, but still, I love those films. I now back to
that's
Seven.
a great movie.
Oh, yeah. Back to Seven. Kevin
What do you feel of the
Spacey.
girl with the dragon tattoo? His version of that film.
I like his adaptation of that. I love the
Yeah.
original TV movies from Sweden. They're really good.
Are
Numi
they
Rap-
TV movies? I thought they were
they were
theatrical movies.
they were released theatrically, but they were originally television films.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, we have to address the elephant in the room of Kevin Spacey, who is, you hate to say it, but just a phenomenal fucking actor, but
yeah.
just a
I mean, look,
shit human
you have to
being.
admit if you watch something, if the person thought to be horrible, like you have to be open with it. It's like yeah, he's good in it. I mean, how
Oh,
many
he's
movies we saw that had
yeah,
Mel Gibson in it that we was like, yeah, he's a great actor, even if he's a horrible person.
yeah,
I
really.
mean,
And then
how many things we watch? I mean,
I
now we got. I know that's a different story.
yeah, I think you
You watch lots of
rewatch
stuff. People are
Seven.
chances like, look, if you watch something, and you have to admit, it's like, yeah, this is the truth. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I did not saw The Flash, but people I know who saw it, it's like, look, Ezra Miller is a horrible person, but he was good in that movie.
Yes and
People I know
no.
they say that I heard people talk positive. It's like it's not like he's the like people say, oh, it's the worst thing they've ever seen. Because
He's a
there are some
lot to
worse stuff.
take in that movie. He is a lot. But as far as Kevin Spacey goes in Seven,
I heard more
you know,
negative stuff about Zach Levi's acting than Ezra Miller. in Shazam 2 compared to the Flash.
And never saw Shazam 2, but yeah, as far as Kevin Spacey goes in Seven, I think you look back at this film now and you watch it now, and you can't escape the specter of who Kevin Spacey is as you watch this now. And in all honesty, it makes his portrayal extra creepy. Because
Like Bill Cosby in Ghost Dad.
yes, like Bill Cosby and Ghost
Knowing
Dad.
how Cosby's and looking at these movies like
Or
this
Leonard
is more
Part
like a horror
6.
movie.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something. But yeah, good performance, dog shit person, unfortunately. You know, it's a good thing that the rest of the people who are acting in this film, like everybody, again, firing on all cylinders, just top of their game acting. It's at least you have that going for you. Because they are fantastic. You know, a lot of cool character actors, like you mentioned, the guy who plays the defense attorney at the end of the film, and you know, just fun people that you hadn't at that point in '95. When was the last time you saw Richard Roundtree and actually recognized him in something? You know what I mean?
Shaft.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody knew him from Shaft and those films, but you know,
he appeared in a lot of bad movies. It's like Boat Trip. How was it? Theodore Rex. That's the one with Bobby Kotick and the dinosaur, the buddy cop.
Yeah.
And what was it? Steel. Where we had him say a line. It's like, man, what's this? It's like, I specifically like the Shaft. And they all looked at him. I was like, what? Because they're supposed to be making a Shaft joke.
Yeah. It's yeah, but yeah, between him and Arlie Emery and even the dude that plays the guy with the knifed strap on, and he plays a lot of similar roles because a couple of years later, he's in Alien Resurrection as the one colonist who hasn't had his chest burster come through yet, who's having the freak out, and similar type of role, but you know, still.
He was also in the Taken films where he played, I think, Liam Neeson's like friend.
Yeah.
He's in the trailer. You saw him. It's like, just in the trailer. It was like, you have to, I think, 24 hours for what to find your daughter. He's the guy who tells them.
Yeah, you're right. He's one of his buddies on that team that he worked with at one time or another. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Also, a very underrated dark comedy, Very Bad Things, with Christian Slater and Charlize Theron.
Oh, I just know that movie. That's the Peter Berg film. I didn't forget it that Peter Berg did that film.
That it was not well received, but you got to look at it like a dark comedy, and you can have at least a little bit of fun with it that way. But yeah, man, 7 fucking rips. I can't believe it's this month is a 28-year-old movie, shockingly. And like I said at the very beginning of this thing, I wish I could go back and see it with absolutely fresh eyes. Can you imagine? It's one of those films that once that twist is seen, once you know how this plays out, sure, it's enjoyable in rewatches because you can pick out all the little things that lead up to, the end, but you can't unsee that again. It's just too bad, but God, what a hell of a movie, man. Thank you for wanting to do this one. Yeah. I know it's one
we
of
thought like with Fincher's new movie, The Killer, coming out, it will be great. And
which looks fantastic.
See what he's going to do with Fassbender also.
Yeah, it looks heavily influenced by, what is it, Le Samurai, which I have never seen, but I know of it.
It feels like this movie.
Yeah, it's,
also,
I know of it.
Heard about, did you know that they almost made a sequel to 7?
Oh, Jesus. That I don't
Here's
need.
what's on the movie. Do you want to know what this is going to be? Apparently, Somerset was going to chase after a killer who claims to be a psychic, and then Somerset later he finds out he's also a psychic. They hated the Morgan Freeman was like, I'm not going to do this film. And then I think he read the script and he's like, this is bullshit. I'm not doing it. They took the script and they wrote and they did the movie with Anthony Hopkins, Colin Farrell, Abby Cornish, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. It's called Solace, something like this.
Huh. I don't remember that
Yeah.
one.
It went
And probably
direct to
for good
video, I think,
reason.
this
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, exactly. God. Well, Yaz, do you have any final thoughts on Seven?
No, nothing, because I would say this is actually one of my favorite David Fincher movie, and it is one of my top 10 films. I don't remember where the ranking is, but I have, because sometimes I change my rankings, but
Oh, of course.
I always discover new movies every day, and it's actually a viewable film. I think I know, yes, it's a very dark film. I mean, but I actually do like this type of movie, especially recently. And like I said, it reminds me like of 70 films where people like sometimes to take risks and
Yeah.
stuff. And that's one thing I also say about this film. It's not like a studio safe, especially right now. You watch studios like you watch movies like Zeta, but then you felt like, oh yeah, there's studios they're trying to play it safe. This one's not like, hey, no, we're not gonna play. I mean,
Oh, not
even
at
the
all.
story behind the scenes are like they try to change, they make it a safe film, and everyone
Yeah.
fought to make it like the tone where it is, not make it
Yeah.
safe.
You can absolutely tell this was not test audienced to death. Not at all. But yeah, and
They
like you
expected
mentioned
the
it.
film to bomb. Like
Yeah.
even the
And it did
experience,
fairly
like the
well.
reason, yeah, it surprised them actually.
Yep, absolutely, and it really helped to catapult Brad Pitt, and yeah, it's got a hell of a legacy. You mentioned, what a beautiful film it is. At the end of the day, just from a visual perspective, sure, it looks dirty, but that color palette, that grime, I can't wait to see this in a nice 4K disc.
Yeah, and
I'm
cinematographer,
down.
I've got his name. He's an Iranian Persian filmmaker, Darius Kunz. I think he worked with Ridley Scott in some movies, and he also did. Let me check his resume because he now has the Bong Joon Ho new movie Mickey. I think
Oh, cool,
he's doing, yeah, because he worked with him on Okja, if I'm not mistaken.
interesting. Okay, well, I'll look forward to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he worked with a lot of people. Like
very cool.
maybe, yeah,
Very cool. This
he
film
worked on. I
has
think he
a
worked.
look, that is for sure. So
Yeah, speaking about, he also shot Alien Resurrection, the cinematographer. Yeah,
it's, you know what? It's not
uh,
as bad as people make it out to be. It is very
I remember
French. Very
when we
French.
reviewed Alien 3, I told what was it? Oh, just 1 second. Okay,
Yeah.
apology if you had to edit this again.
No, you're okay. But yeah, what was it that you told? Was it Lady Macbeth?
Yes, I told her that Joss Whedon wrote the Alien 6. It's like, oh, that makes sense
Oh,
now.
it makes so much sense when you listen to that dialogue that is a Joss Whedon film. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think he's not. I don't think because they did actually Panic Room. There's two credit for cinematography. I think he didn't finish the whole movie. I think him and David Fincher had the fallout. Then they brought in a different cinematographer to finish the film.
Yeah, and I think this writer also did Panic Room, and he's done a lot of script doctoring
I don't
on a
think he
lot
did
of
Panic. He
other.
did Steve wrote that. I mean, he did some script doctoring for some David Fincher
Yeah, a
films.
lot of David Fincher
Panic Room, I
films.
think it's David Cope, if I'm not mistaken.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
he did. The Lost City, Uncut Gems. Yeah, his last major thing was Uncut Gems.
okay.
Mickey 70, that's the movie I was looking for.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I'm looking forward to those for sure. Yes,
Yeah.
it's been an absolute pleasure having you on again. If you'd like, where can people find you?
Mr. Yasmathan, with Day Yasmathan on Twitter, Mr. Yasmathan on Instagram. Apologies, like Twitter got some, if that's before Elon Musk. Some reason they I don't know what happened. They suspended my account. I can't get it back. And also, like I didn't mention this at the beginning, but my podcast, I have it, Redemption of the Rot, but it's on hiatus because of some work stuff. I couldn't, because I don't have the time to record it. But you can check out the episode, Redemption of the Rotten, on YouTube. Was it? Oh yes, it's been a while since I promoted my podcast. So and all the other part on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, any other. Most the major way you can find out.
We'll at the very least have the YouTube link in the show notes for sure. It'll be there below.
Just go to my link. I think it's Linktree/yes300pro. You'll find my links, everything where you can find it.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for coming on. It's always a pleasure. But this has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. I'll be back soon enough with another episode. But until next time, stay spoopy, everyone.